In the Planescape campaign setting for D&D, there are 17 outer planes, which are essentially the realms of D&D's afterlife. There's one plane for each moral alignment, ranging from chaotic good to lawful evil to true neutral. I've already covered the planes of lawful evil and lawful good in depth. In this video, I'll be telling you everything you need to know about the plane of chaotic evil, the Abyss. Because the Abyss has over 100 described layers, compared to the other planes that have like 5, this video, as you can see, is super long. Feel free to watch this video over the course of many days, or to make use of the timestamps to just watch the parts you're most interested in. Before we get into the details of the Abyss, we first need to understand what chaotic evil really means in D&D. If this doesn't interest you, or you feel you already know, just skip ahead to the next section. But I will say that each edition of D&D has brought with it different versions of alignment, whether that's one axis like original D&D, quasi 2-axis like 4th edition, or full 2-axis like 5th edition. I briefly covered the history of alignment in my video on Mount Celestia. Each edition of D&D also brings with it different definitions for good, evil, chaos, law, and neutrality. So the question of what chaotic evil means isn't so clear-cut. And since Planescape was a campaign setting made for 2nd edition, I think it makes the most sense to primarily consider 2nd edition's alignment system when answering this question, especially because the outer planes of Planescape are the literal manifestations of alignment. I've also covered what good and law and evil mean in my previous videos in this series, but I haven't yet explained how each edition of D&D views chaos. In original D&D, chaos was the alignment of monsters and villains, generally not of playable characters, and it was interchangeable with evil. In early D&D, such as the 1981 basic set, chaos is essentially supreme individuality, where one has no concern for others whatsoever. Just like a neutral character, a chaotic character may work with others, but may run away or turn on them whenever it suits them. A chaotic character will just be less predictable about it. A prime difference between a chaotic character and a neutral one is that a chaotic character believes that chance and randomness is what rules the world, where a neutral character believes in self-determination over luck. 2nd edition, which has a 2-axis alignment system, adopts more of that self-determination and less of the luck mindset. 3rd edition's version of chaos moves further away from randomness in its definition. It emphasizes freedom, adaptability, flexibility, and self-expression. 4th edition has no independent definition for chaos, as chaos can only be attached to evil. 5th edition makes it clear that, like 3rd edition, chaos is not about randomness, but about self-direction and following your whims. The general direction of these changes is that as the editions go on, the law-chaos spectrum becomes less about a character's views on the structure of the universe and more about their views on society. On the whole, though, chaos is more about individualism than anything else. But since 2nd edition is of special importance for Planescape, we should still keep in mind that chaos does generally imply some belief about the structure of the universe, specifically the belief that there is no preordained order or careful balance of forces that must be maintained. Evil in D&D is generally about selfishness, though 3rd edition does make it about actively causing destruction and harm. So a chaotic evil character then, according to 2nd edition, is one who is motivated entirely by personal gain and pleasure, and sees nothing wrong with taking whatever they want from anyone by whatever means possible. They don't operate on any code aside from wanton self-indulgence. A lawful evil creature can at least be trusted to be true to their word. It's just that they'll screw you over through a loophole or technicality. A chaotic evil creature can't be trusted whatsoever. Chaotic evil characters only band together when they cannot achieve their goals alone, but will defect from the group or overthrow the group's leader whenever they deem it to be in their best interest. Since there's no loyalty among chaotic evil characters, they're all constantly on the lookout for treachery. Any order that is maintained is held up entirely by force, and that order is tenuous at best. 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition put it a very similar way, but make it more about wanting to cause destruction and violence. You might think that because I described evil as selfishness and chaos as individualism and self-determination, that they're basically the same thing. Original D&D and 4th edition would agree with that, but there is a difference. Selfishness and individualism are both about the self, but in different ways. Pure selfishness is believing that only you matter, whereas pure individualism is believing that only individuals and individual expression matter, which does include other individuals. It's about nonconformity, so chaotic good characters are just as individualistic as chaotic evil ones, following their own whims and ideas, but using them to help others instead of only helping themselves, or even hurting others. The idea that order can be found in chaos might be surprising or counterintuitive. You might expect chaotic characters to never work together, but I think this is easier to accept if I explain the difference between process randomness and pattern randomness, even though I did say that chaos in D&D isn't the same thing as randomness. Imagine a random number generator, which means that each number it spits out will be impossible to reliably predict. As it accumulates a list of randomly generated numbers, there will be stretches of numbers that don't look so random, just through sheer chance. The random number generator itself is an example of process randomness. The numbers it produces, at least when the numbers don't appear to follow a pattern, are an example of pattern randomness. A random process can result in non-random patterns. Chaos is more akin to process randomness than pattern randomness. Order can arise from chaos, and that doesn't mean that the whole underlying structure is no longer chaotic. Chaotic characters can temporarily create ordered environments or groups while still maintaining their chaotic nature. The Abyss, just like the 9 Hells of Baator, is a real contender for being one of the worst places in the entire multiverse. Whatever you don't like, the Abyss has it. Whatever makes you feel uncomfortable, whatever you're afraid of, whatever you try to avoid, it's here, and it will find you. For me personally, I don't like spiders. And guess what? There are 2 layers dedicated to spiders. I'm sorry if you do like spiders, because I don't think I'll be putting any on screen. I really don't want to have to scroll through Google image results for Lolth. The Abyss is a nightmare plane where everything rots and gets corrupted. It's a plane of cruelty, treachery, murder, betrayal, hunger, and might makes right. It's a plane of evil creatures all trying to kill each other, or at the very least take power over each other. The saying goes, in the Abyss, you're either quick or you're dead. All of the outer planes are infinite, because any given layer is infinite, but the Abyss is special in that it has an infinite number of infinite layers, or at least more layers than anyone's ever counted. The furthest the Fraternity of Order has managed to count is 679, and according to some, the Abyss is growing, so there are more layers all the time. Some layers are sealed off from the others, where finding a way in is incredibly difficult, but finding your way out is impossible. On some level, it makes no sense to conceptualize what a plane would look like from the outside, although then again, much of Planescape makes no sense. But you can think of the Abyss as a messy, endless deck of cards, with layers arranged in a haphazard way down forever. All layers are bad, but some are worse than others. Some are habitable. Some are only habitable through the use of magic, and some aren't habitable at all. But just because a layer is technically habitable doesn't mean it's pleasant or safe. Even in a habitable layer, you'll still most likely die there. Some layers steal memories. Some rot your body from within. Some slowly freeze you. Some have poisonous water. Some have no air. Some have burning sunlight. But of course, the environmental danger is only half the problem. The Abyss is home to the demons, also known as tanar'ri, 2nd edition's attempt to evade the wrath of irrationally fearful and superstitious moms during the Satanic Panic by not using the word demon. Demons and the other horrific denizens of the Abyss are the other half of what makes it such a gruesome, dangerous, horrific, nightmarish place to be. Demons belong to a larger group of creatures known as fiends. There are 3 main kinds of fiends: devils, daemons, and demons. Devils, also known as Beatezu, are lawful evil and are native to the 9 Hells of Baator. Daemons, more commonly known as Yugoloths, are neutral evil and are native to the Grey Waste. Demons are chaotic evil, native to the Abyss. Before, I said that being evil is about selfishness, not necessarily about enjoying causing harm to others. Well, the tanar'ri really do love causing pain, despair, bloodshed, misery, fear, and humiliation. They are hatred, greed, and rage made manifest. But beyond the malevolence, if the tanar'ri are one thing, they're adaptable. The Abyss, due to its chaotic nature, is an ever-shifting place. Adaptability is a requirement to survive here. Since the Abyss contains infinite layers, or near infinite layers, and the tanar'ri adapt quickly to suit their environment, there are essentially an infinite number of types of tanar'ri, but some types are more common than others. I'll describe 25 of those types, the ones that appear in 2nd edition Planescape. There are 7 levels of the demonic hierarchy: Larvae, Least Tanar'ri, Lesser Tanar'ri, Greater Tanar'ri, True Tanar'ri, Guardian Tanar'ri, and Abyssal Lords. Though since this is chaos we're talking about, the demons themselves wouldn't accept this hierarchy. These are just classifications put on where they don't necessarily apply very well. The lowest level, the larvae, are the same as the larvae that show up in the other lower planes. Ugly, useless creatures who aren't really even Tanar'ri, Beatezu, or Yugoloth, but rather just non-denominational fiends. Essentially, the raw material that gets turned into demon, devil, or daemon. In the Abyss, larvae spontaneously form in the chaotic maelstroms all throughout the plane, where they then adapt and change shape, evolving, though evolving in the non-scientific, more Pokemon-like sense of the word, into Least Tanar'ri to meet the demands of their environment. Those who don't adapt fast enough die. Most of them die, but there are so many that it doesn't really matter how many die. These are the naturally occurring larvae. The rest of the larvae are petitioners. If you're immortal, when you die, your spirit travels to the outer plane that most matches your alignment, where you're called a petitioner. Chaotic evil spirits are reborn as larvae in the Mountain of Woe, in the 400th layer of the Abyss, where they are judged by Nalfeshni, a type of true Tanar'ri, and transformed according to their merits. Unpromising larvae become mains, sufficiently evil and malleable larvae become dretches, and too proud larvae become rudderkin. Or at least that's what the Nalfeshni claim to be doing, but really they judge each larva on nothing more than arbitrary whims intended as a mockery of a lawful system. Mains, dretches, and rudderkin are the least Tanar'ri. Of course, there are probably countless other types of least Tanar'ri, but these are the most common 3. Mains are the most worthless. Their role is to be food for other demons and to serve as extremely expendable soldiers in the Blood War. Cannon fodder, basically. Other Tanar'ri don't even consider them to be Tanar'ri, and it's rare for one of them to ascend to a higher form of Tanar'ri. While they are individually weak, they attack in giant hordes that would overwhelm even the most skilled opponents. Mains never die except when eaten. They turn into a green vapor after being killed that coalesces into a new main a day later. Dretches aren't much better than mains, but other Tanar'ri do at least consider them to be one of them. They look similar to mains too, both being squat humanoids with sickly pale skin. Dretches are a bit more intelligent than mains though. Some try to be as helpful as possible in the hope of being promoted to a higher form. Others know how low they are and rebel, thinking they have nothing to lose. These ones get promptly eaten. Dretches are the most common Tanar'ri, if you don't count the mains, and no one ever seems to. And I should say that while some dretches do try to be helpful in order to get promoted to a higher form, that's generally not how promotion works in the Abyss. Typically, progression through the Tanar'ri ranks works based off of self-determination and proving your own power, rather than anyone else deciding to transform you, except of course when it comes to the larvae on the Mountain of Woe. Essentially, the most common way a Tanar'ri is promoted to the next rank is by believing that they're powerful enough to do so. They have to prove it to themselves. Rudderkin are also terrible and worthless. None of the least Tanar'ri are at all impressive. Rudderkin look like malformed humans. Unlike mains and dretches, they don't wander in hordes, but are solitary, scattered throughout the Abyss, outcasts among Tanar'ri. Rudderkin are more chaotic than other Tanar'ri, as they have no purpose, serve no masters, and have no society. They just try to kill any non-Tanar'ri they see. Sometimes they try to kill Tanar'ri too. Alufines are the female children of succubi and mortals. They look like attractive female humans, and could almost pass for them too, if it wasn't for their wings. Their dual nature of being half Tanar'ri, half mortal makes them outcasts. This outcast status makes them hateful, even by Tanar'ri standards. The only reason they're respected by the Tanar'ri is that they're powerful spellcasters. Not all Alufines are evil either. Some are chaotic neutral, or even true neutral, if their mortal father wasn't evil. They are the weakest of the lesser demons. Cambions are the children of Tanar'ri and mortal females. The mother never survives the birth. There are 2 types of Cambion depending on what rank of Tanar'ri was the father. Major Cambions are the offspring of lesser or greater Tanar'ri. Baron Cambions, also called Marquis Cambions, are the offspring of true Tanar'ri and are more powerful. Like Alufines, Cambions are also hateful outcasts, though they are prized as assassins and bodyguards, often employed by Balors. Sometimes a Cambion isn't chaotic evil, but neutral or even good. These ones are outcasted even more, as they obviously have or want no place in tanar'ri society, but they aren't wanted in good-aligned communities either. Armanites look like pale, undead creatures with ram or bull horns. Where Alufines and Cambions can only be born and not made, Armanites can be both born and made. Armanites can reproduce more Armanites, and lower types of tanar'ri can turn into Armanites. Armanites are the mercenaries and scavengers of the Blood War. Of course, Yugoloths are the true mercenaries of the Blood War, so I guess I should say that Armanites are the mercenaries and scavengers of the tanar'ri side of the Blood War. The Blood War, if you're not familiar, is an endless war between the demons and devils over who gets control of the lower planes, and from there, all the planes, and from there, the whole multiverse. The Yugoloths are caught in between the conflict, and rumors say that they actually started the conflict and are really the ones benefiting from the whole thing. They act as mercenaries for both sides. Since the Beatezu and the tanar'ri are evenly matched, the tanar'ri with their infinite hordes and the Beatezu with their superior organization and battle tactics, the Blood War has so far just been an eternal stalemate. Sometimes one side makes a great victory and makes great advances, but it's always pushed back and countered by the other side. But anyway, the Armanites serve higher-up tanar'ri in the Blood War, but they're fickle and always expect a payment. Armanites devour the corpses of the fallen, as well as their spirits, rendering them unresurrectable. Morezi are like ghouls, except rather than just feeding off the flesh and life forces of their victims, they steal portions of their victims' memories, skills, and appearance. Because of these abilities, they seek out the most powerful and intelligent mortals they can find. Their ability to take on appearances of their victims kind of makes them act a bit like doppelgangers. They like to ambush lone travelers, eat them, and then use their memories and newly acquired likeness to pretend to be them, find that traveler's friends, and then eat their friends too. Though unfortunately for most Morezi, a life in the Abyss doesn't grant a lot of opportunity to eat mortals. Sure, many stupid mortals may travel to the Abyss looking for adventure, and many more may wind up in the Abyss by mistake. But the sheer number and variety of tanar'ri available to kill them make it unlikely that the lucky tanar'ri will be a Morezi. So most Morezi get shuffled off to the Blood War before being able to mature to their full potential. Those who do get to consume a few mortals and achieve their potential, perhaps by escaping the Abyss for a while, often act as expert spies and assassins upon their return. Just like for Armanites, if you get consumed by Morezi, you can't be resurrected except by a wish spell. Succubi are stunningly beautiful women with perfect features, although that's only how they look most of the time. Their true form is still that of a beautiful woman, but much more obviously demonic, with large wings and evil glowing eyes. Their role is to tempt mortal men into recreational acts, penetrations and such, and while being penetrated, they subtly drain their victims of their energy. Most victims don't notice. After doing this a few times, the victim dies, and the succubus takes their life force to the Abyss to serve as a slave or food. The succubi do this because they enjoy it, not because they're acting on anyone's orders. The other demons, noticing how useful the succubi are, just let them do their thing. Incubi are the male counterparts to succubi. They're equally beautiful, and their role is to tempt mortal females. Or other males. I mean, why not? Succubi could tempt females too. I'm sure succubi and incubi are down to have sex with anyone who's willing. After all, why pass up on easy prey? Either way, incubi are far less numerous than succubi are. The theory is that females are less frequently tempted by sex and beauty than males are, and while gay males are tempted by incubi, there are fewer gay males than straight ones. Yaqlal, or perhaps it's more like Yaqlal, are the handmaidens of Lolth, the queen of spiders, a drow goddess. Lolth has 2 layers of the Abyss, which I'll talk about later. The 65th layer, called the Court of the Spider Queen, and the 66th layer, called the Demonweb Pits. The Yaqlal are her servants, mostly found within Lolth's layers, but they also act as her agents elsewhere in the Outer Planes and on the Prime Material Plane. The Yaqlal have several forms they can take. Their true form is a mass of amorphous slime with 8 tentacles and a single red eye, but they can also take a gaseous form, the form of a beautiful young woman humanoid, usually a drow, or the form of a giant black spider. The Yochlal are unique among the tanar'ri, as they're the only type of demon that exclusively serves one god. Bar Lagura are hulking, brutish demons of low intelligence. They resemble orangutans. The Bar Lagura are pretty tribalistic, generally disliking and staying away from other tanar'ri. They only obey other tanar'ri that are more powerful than them, and that's usually how it goes in the Abyss. They're used in the Blood War as scouts and experts in guerrilla warfare. If left to their own devices, though, Bar Lagura will form their own tribes and governments, though governments is a strong word. They are still chaotic evil, after all. The governments are mostly big monkeys in charge of little monkey, like how most of the Abyss operates, but consisting only of Bar Lagura. Bulezau are the heavy infantry of the Blood War, and that's their main purpose. They're strong, stubborn, stupid, and crazed for bloodshed. They look like minotaurs, except more skeletal and rotten. They attack any enemy they see, and if they go too long without seeing enemies, then everything starts to look like an enemy. Nabasu are the weakest of the greater demons, though of course greater demons are all quite powerful. The Nabasu revel in spreading terror. They look like 7-foot-tall gargoyles. Nabasu hold a unique place among the ranks of tanar'ri, as they are the only demons whose life cycle necessitates venturing to the prime material plane. Sure, other demons go to the material plane, such as Murezi and Succubi, but Nabasu have to do it in order to mature. They have 2 distinct phases, fledgling and mature. Even a fledgling Nabasu is powerful, but once they mature is when they become worthy of the title of Greater tanar'ri. In order to mature, they must travel to the prime material plane and kill mortals and cause fear, panic, and misery. Then they return to the Abyss and get locked up in one of the iron fortresses of the plane of infinite portals until their ability to terrorize is needed again. The idea the tanar'ri have is that since the outer planes are shaped by belief, the more that demons kill and terrorize mortals, the more mortals will believe that demons are frightening and powerful, which will cause the demons to actually become more frightening and powerful. Chasmi are creepy hybrids between giant flies and humans. Their role is to be the punishers of the tanar'ri that evade participation in the Blood War. They psychically spot the deserters and swoop down from the skies to kill them and suck out all of their blood. Because of this, the other tanar'ri don't like them very much and try to kill them when they can, but the true tanar'ri protect the Chasmi from annihilation. Sometimes weaker demons transform into a Chasmi, but most Chasmi are born out of the eggs that other Chasmi lay asexually. Babaus are the recruiters of the Blood War, going around the Abyss rounding up least and lesser tanar'ri to fight. This draws a lot of hate from the least and lesser tanar'ri, so they often try to gang up on a Babau to kill it. But the Babaus are powerful, so these attacks don't usually succeed. Plus, since the Babaus are important to the true tanar'ri, these attacks sometimes attract the attention of one of them. Babaus look like tall, leathery skeletons. Goristros, or Goristroi, are gigantic, hulking, bestial demons, looking something like a combination between a bull, a bear, and a werewolf, but 20 feet tall. Their awesome strength and terrifying size make them prized among Abyssal Lords and gods of the Abyss as guardians, enforcers, and even siege engines. They eat anything that moves, including other tanar'ri. Wasterlith live in the watery parts of the Abyss and can be found in the other lower planes, especially in the River Styx, where they can swim without losing their memories. They're basically giant, horrific water snakes with bulging eyes and arms with webbed fingers. They're solitary creatures, though they often horrify other creatures into serving them. They're also territorial, not straying far from the spot they've conquered, which is usually a 25-mile diameter. Many can be found on the 88th and 89th layers of the Abyss, known as the Gaping Maw and the Shadow Sea, respectively. Aside from their power, the thing that really distinguishes a true tanar'ri from other types is that true tanar'ri are never born. They all evolve from weaker forms. Vraks look like vultures with human arms. They're the elite fighting forces in the Blood War. They possess an uncommon trait among tanar'ri. They coordinate with each other exceptionally well. Because of this, they always fight in groups, and they travel in groups too, so you're unlikely to ever encounter a single Vrak. Hezru look like 7-foot-tall toads with arms rather than forelegs. Unlike toads, they often stand upright. Their role in tanar'ri society is to herd the troops of the Blood War. The Babaus bring the armies together, and then the Hezru keep watch over them. A couple times every century, A Hezru undertakes what is known as a dark walk, where it plane shifts to the prime material plane to make pacts with mortals in need. They help the mortal, and in return bring the mortal or someone close to them back to the abyss and transform them into a main. Graz'zt are weird 15-foot tall dogs with an extra set of arms with pincers on them. They tempt mortal wizards into summoning them to their plane, where they indulge the wizard's desires for power for a little while until they suck out the mortal's powers, as well as some of the power of the very plane they live on. Algoliths serve as personal agents of the Abyssal Lords. Their purpose is to corrupt all they touch, seeking to pollute the world beyond the abyss physically and morally. They look like amorphous blobs of phosphorescent green slime with eye globs or stalks spread out around their body. They can also take on semi-rigid forms and a gaseous form. Algoliths can reside in places of the abyss that are too foul even for other tanar'ri. Due to their slimy forms, they're thought to be the creation of Juiblex, demon lord of slime. Algoliths don't really ever fight in the Blood War. Meriliths are snakes from the waist down, but beautiful female humans from the waist up, except they have 6 arms. They're the generals and master tacticians of the Blood War. While it may seem strange that an endless army whose success against the Beatezu depends on sheer numbers and power even has tacticians, the tactics they employ are designed to be unpredictable, to confound the Beatezu and keep them guessing. Meriliths hate the Graz'zt, and they consider it themselves to be the true force behind the Blood War, rather than the Balors. Nalfeshni are 20-foot tall, bloated, vaguely humanoid, ugly combinations of an ape and a boar with small wings on their backs. They are the judges of the petitioners of the abyss, inhabiting the 400th layer where chaotic evil souls are judged and granted appropriate forms, or at least what the Nalfeshni consider to be appropriate. They have the power to draw energy out of a creature with a look. They also draw out emotions, feeding on hatred and despair. They are easily the most intelligent of the tanar'ri, and as such they consider themselves to be superior to the Balors, though the Balors are far more powerful. Balors are the greatest and most terrible of the tanar'ri. Of all the tanar'ri, they look the most like proper demons. They're 12 feet tall, have dark red skin, huge wings, long claws that drip with venom, and are surrounded in flames at all times. They're known to carry swords of lightning in one hand and a whip in the other. If the Meriliths are the brains behind the Blood War, the Balors are the impetus. They inspire the rest of the tanar'ri to be the ruthless, warmongering psychopaths that they are, either through the idea of one day becoming a Balor, or through fear of disobedience. There is only one type of guardian tanar'ri, the Mal'idai. They are the enforcers. Their role is to keep the true tanar'ri in line, to make sure they remain faithful to the vision of the Blood War. They report to the Balors, but if a Balor turns its back on the cause, they'll make sure it's destroyed. Mal'idai look like giant red-skinned humanoids, but with 2 heads, one of a dog for looking in front, and one of a snake for looking behind. Something I don't like about the tanar'ri is that for the most part, they don't really look like demons. Half of them look like beasts or beast people. Armanites look like ram people, Bar Ligura look like orangutans, Bulazau look like bull people, Kazmi look like fly people, Gorostroi look like bull, bear, wolf people, Wasterliths look like snakes, Vrox look like vultures, Hezru look like frogs, Graz'zt look like dogs, Meriliths look like snake people, Nalfeshni look like ape boar people, and Mal'idai look like snake dog people. In comparison, a greater proportion of Beatezu look like devils. I suppose on some level it makes sense that the tanar'ri look like random creatures. It's chaotic. But on another level, I think, shouldn't a demon look like a demon? There's a 4th edition book called the Demonomicon that adds a ton more demons. And what I like about them is that a lot more of them actually look the part of demons. I won't go over all the details here, as that would easily triple or maybe even quadruple the length of this section, and it's already been pretty long. But a few examples include Feraliths, Hydrodemons, Malgodemons, Quoroks, Voracoliths, Yagnodemons, and Zythars. The Abyssal Lords are the strongest of the tanar'ri, though in some cases they can't even rightly be called tanar'ri at all. Some are gods, some are kind of gods, but not quite, and some are just very powerful demons. This is because all it takes to be an Abyssal Lord, also called a Demon Lord, is to rule a layer of the Abyss. And the Abyss is unique among the Outer Planes in that realms and layers are the same thing here. Or maybe a more accurate way of saying it is that some layers have no realms at all, and for other layers, the entire layer is a realm. In other planes, realms, the domains of the gods, are scattered throughout the various layers. These are places that don't obey the same rules as the rest of the layer and are shaped by the gods who live in them, and it's where their devout worshippers go when they die. But in the Abyss, if there's a realm, it comprises the whole layer. So for instance, the Demonweb pits is Lolth's realm, or her most prominent one anyway, and it's the entirety of layer 66. So she is both a goddess and an Abyssal Lord. Same with Yeenoghu, who rules the 422nd layer, though the divine status of some demon lords changes from edition to edition. Most Abyssal Lords are not gods, but some, like Lolth and Yeenoghu, are. But Yeenoghu, while considered a lesser god in 2nd edition, is not considered a god at all in 5th edition for some reason, even though he's worshipped by most gnolls. And as far as I can tell, there are two things that can make you a god in D&D. Killing a god and taking its place, and having a lot of worshippers. Yeenoghu has enough worshippers to be a proper god, I would think. After all, how many gnolls are there in existence? And how many of them worship him? There is a bit of a canonical explanation for why some editions consider certain Abyssal Lords to be gods and other editions don't, and that's the ebb and flow of their worship. So then, canonically, Yeenoghu is a demon lord who has at times achieved actual godhood, but the fluctuations of his worship make his status as a god unstable. And while this is a good explanation, it does kind of rely on taking all editions to be canon simultaneously, which websites like the Forgotten Realms wiki try to do, listing out a timeline of events that connects all editions together. However, I don't really think doing this is a good idea or makes much sense, as there are so many contradictions that crop up. To me, it feels like the writers of each new edition want to do something new and cool with their lore, without really caring if it directly contradicts old lore, and then later they act as if it's all continuous. Like how in 2nd edition, the model of D&D's cosmology was the Great Wheel, but then it changed to the World Tree cosmology, and then to the World Axis cosmology, and then back to the Great Wheel cosmology. According to the patched-together, edition-spanning canon, the entire cosmology really did change because of the spell plague, destroying the World Tree and the ethereal plane, but then the ethereal plane came back into existence again? It's all so messy that to me it just kind of seems stupid to try to consider it all canon. Like the lore that explains it is a poor post hoc explanation for a different cosmology the writers thought would be cool at the time. But anyway, some demon lords are called demon princes to emphasize the fact that they're more powerful than other demon lords, at least in later D&D. But in 2nd edition, the title Abyssal Prince is actually lesser than Abyssal Lord. If there are an infinite number of layers in the Abyss, then you might think there are an infinite number of Abyssal Lords, but there apparently isn't. That's because many of the layers of the Abyss, I suppose an infinite number of them, aren't ruled by anyone. In the Abyss, each layer has a sort of sentience. It shapes itself to suit its lord, but the layers also resist rule. So you've got to be strong to be an Abyssal Lord, and if you're not strong enough, the layer you're trying to rule will eat you, adding you to its power, making it even harder for the next would-be lord to be successful. This is why so many layers remain without rulers. The more who try and fail, the harder it gets. According to legend, when the number of Abyssal Lords reaches some unknown number, the wars they wage against each other will intensify to the point that only one will remain alive, and that demon lord will then become one with the Abyss, gaining all of its power. But even if there aren't an infinite number of Abyssal Lords, there are still a lot. I'll tell you more about them when I talk about their layers. There is one more type of demon that I've got to talk about, and that's the Obyriths. There's actually one more type of demon on top of that, but I'll talk about them much later, as they're quite minor. Obyriths are not tanar'ri. They are ancient demons, the original inhabitants of the Abyss, like how ancient Beatorians are the original inhabitants of the 9 Hells of Beator. Obyriths were introduced in 3rd edition, but were fleshed out more completely in 4th edition. 4th edition lore often doesn't work well with 2nd edition lore, but I'll tell you about Obyriths anyway. Obyriths are a race of creatures so chaotic, so evil, so foul, so horrendous, that even the universe itself doesn't want them. And that's because they aren't from this universe. They're so alien and so horrific that just looking upon them is enough to drive a person to insanity. Their appearance is so revolting that it goes beyond matters of subjective preference into being objectively, factually wrong. The story goes that they originally came from an altogether separate universe, where they dominated it and twisted it and drained all life from it until they realized it would die, and them with it. To prevent their own extinction, they devised a plan to escape their universe to infect a new one. They created a shard of pure evil, capable of pushing through the boundaries between realities. This seed of evil, now in some other universe, drifted alone for millennia while the Obyriths waited on the other side, slowly dying out, waiting for their plan to come to fruition. You see, the shard contained the essence of the Obyriths. It was linked to them. And so when finally one of the gods of the early universe found the shard, his mind was corrupted in an instant, driving him to madness. This deity was Tharizdun. The Obyriths, whispering through the seed, told Tharizdun to plant it in the astral sea, which they promised would grant him dominion over it. But even in Tharizdun's shattered mind, he still recognized that this plan wouldn't work, as the other gods would stop him before he could manage it. So instead, he planted the seed in the far reaches of the cosmos, in the elemental chaos, which is something that doesn't exist in the 2nd edition Planescape setting, where its immense power of chaos and evil formed the Abyss. When the seed was planted, it ripped open a portal to the Obyrith's home universe, where they burst forth into the freshly forming Abyss. Their realm was then consumed and destroyed by the seed, which still lingers at the heart of the Abyss. And Tharizdun, given even more power than he already had by this time through the shard, and wanting control over his new plane of the Abyss, fought against the Obyriths. He summoned forth the first tanar'ri from the very substance of the Abyss to fight alongside him. Their war turned into a stalemate, and several primordial entities fought over control of the Shard of Evil. The other gods eventually took notice and locked Tharizdun away in one of the layers of the Abyss. The Obyriths were already low in numbers from their long eons waiting in the ruins of their old realm, and now, after their war with Tharizdun, not many of them remained. They say there are just 12 Abyssal Lords left. But the Obyriths have interbred with the tanar'ri a little bit, and it's thought that wastreliths, for example, are descended from them. Also, this lore tells a different origin story for Asmodeus than the one I described in my video on the 9 Hells of Baator. Asmodeus was an angel while all this was going on, perhaps an Asimon or maybe an Archon, and once Tharizdun was locked away, Asmodeus was tasked with watching over his prison, along with a few other angels. An Obyrith named Pazuzu, or Pazrael, played on Asmodeus' vanity and pride to corrupt him. Asmodeus then found the Shard of Evil and stole a sliver of it, which helped him become a god. But this is all 4th edition lore, so if you don't want to go off of this story, then I think it suffices that the Obyriths are ancient and terrible demons that predate the tanar'ri. In 3rd edition, Obyriths aren't necessarily from another universe. They're just the original inhabitants and rulers of the Abyss. And it was them, not Tharizdun, who created the first tanar'ri, who were the Obyriths' subjects for a good long time until the Obyriths were overthrown with the help of the Fae. And Tharizdun, in more general D&D lore, is a god of such incredible evil that all the gods, evil and good alike, banded together to imprison him to prevent him from destroying the universe. He influences the universe through giving mind-rending dreams to his few but insanely fanatical followers, who attempt to break him out of his prison, which, if successful, would spell the end of reality. In Critical Role lore, Tharizdun dreams the Abyss into being. In 2nd edition, the edition Planescape was made for, remember, and also like in 3rd edition, Tharizdun did not create the Abyss. In my personal headcanon, Tharizdun is one of 6 primordial entities, the only beings left over from the previous universe, the Lady of Pain being another one. Tharizdun corrupted and destroyed the last universe, and so the other 5 primordial entities started a new universe and locked him in the old one, where he sits alone in an empty void. But he's a being of such power that he can still spread his influence across the boundaries between realities. In the Abyssal Plague D&D book series, there's a similar story. In the universe before this one, there was an abyss known as the Void Harrow that corrupted and destroyed the entire universe, and for Tharizdun's creation of the Abyss in this universe, he was imprisoned in the Void Harrow. Now that you know all about the demons that inhabit the Abyss, it's time to learn more about the Abyss itself. Each of the outer planes distorts magic in some way. Magic may work better or less well or have different effects depending on the school of magic, the type of spell it is. For example, if it's a chaotic spell, it may not work so well in lawful planes, and sometimes depending on the alignment of the spellcaster. The Abyss is a place that's very hostile to magic. Wizards are known to enslave demons with their magic, and demons really hate being enslaved by mortals, so they take out their anger on all magic users. So if you find yourself in the Abyss and a demon learns that you like to cast spells, well, you're going to be in even more danger than you already were. It's even worse than that, though. Magic actually draws attention in the Abyss. Using magic in the Abyss is like sending out a beacon telling everyone your location. Though the strength of that beacon and how much the demons care will depend on how powerful the magic you're using is, what kind of magic it is, and what you're using it for. If you're using some sort of binding spell, that'll get a reaction for sure. If you're using an offensive spell, that's more likely to draw a reaction than using a defensive spell like a ward. Spells that trick or inform are the least likely to be noticed. If you use non-harmful magic on a demon, the reaction won't be that big. Using magic to attack a lesser tanar'ri will earn a more severe reaction, but still not terrible. But for greater tanar'ri, more so, and for true tanar'ri, even more so still. Basically, the closer you come to acting against an Abyssal Lord, the worse it will be for you. And these reactions in response to magic don't just come in the form of incoming swarms of demons intent on ripping your limbs off. They might be immediate and magical in nature too, such as a disease, a fireball exploding in your face, or one of your magical items becoming corrupted. Another way that magic is altered in the Outer Planes is that spell keys are usually required to cast spells normally. Spell keys can be words, gestures, or objects. In Mount Celestia, they're pure metals of different shapes depending on the spell school, and in the Nine Hells of Baator, they're also objects, each layer demanding more and more spell keys as you descend. In the Abyss, spell keys are not objects. They are bribes to the lords of the lair to ignore the spell and let you get away with casting it. The spell key for necromancy is to kill someone, not a tanar'ri. The spell key for elemental magic requires destroying or corrupting a pure substance. The spell key for alteration requires mixing your blood with the blood of the recipient. The spell key for conjuration requires a monetary bribe to the tanar'ri being summoned. The more powerful they are, the greater the bribe has to be. Each divination spell requires a different key, as the tanar'ri don't like being spied on, so they make it very difficult for you. And beware of false keys, as the tanar'ri like to spread them around, both to make magic use harder, and because it's fun when a gullible mage thinks drinking boiling oil is a valid spell key. So not that you'd ever actually want to go to the Abyss, but how do you get there? Well, it's troublingly easy to find yourself in the Abyss. In Sigil, the City of Doors, and yes, I'm saying that right, there are portals all over the place. That's why it's called that. The Lady of Pain keeps a tight grip on these portals, not letting anybody make more, and not making it easy to exit or enter the city, which is why it's also called the Cage. You also can't enter or exit Sigil through any means other than the portals, but you can leave Sigil, though often it'll be through some portal leading to an unknown destination. Do you really want to leave bad enough to risk it? Some portals in Sigil are known, always in the same location. These are generally guarded and basically owned by the various factions of Sigil, which I described in this video. If you're not in with the faction, they're unlikely to let you use the portal. Other portals appear spontaneously and then disappear after a use or two. Most portals in Sigil, though, are secret portals that move around in patterns most people don't know. If there was at least one portal leading to every layer of every outer plane in Sigil, then basically all of those portals would lead to the Abyss. But even though that's not the case, the general idea still holds. There are a lot of portals to the Abyss in the City of Doors. So even if you're not altogether that likely to wind up in the Abyss by traveling through a random portal, you're more likely to wind up there than any other individual plane. Other ways to get to the Abyss include using the plane shift spell, the gate spell, a cubic gate, a color pool in the astral plane, or a ride down the river Styx if you're in one of the other lower planes. The way most people choose to go to the Abyss, though maybe choose isn't the right word, is by earning it as their afterlife. If you were more chaotic than evil in life, you'd go to Pandemonium. If you were more evil than chaotic, you'd go to Carcery, or perhaps you like to pronounce it Carceri, or Carceri. But if the life you lived was the right balance between chaotic and evil, then your spirit will travel to the Abyss, where you'll be reborn as a petitioner, a larva with no memories, or at best just vague memories of your past life, sent to layer 400, as I described earlier, to be judged by the Nalfeshni. If your cravings for power are potent enough, you may, through long eons, murder your way through the ranks and become a true tanar'ri. But most likely you'll just be used as food or cannon fodder. Though some people go to the Abyss when they die, even if they weren't chaotic evil in life. For instance, those who've made bargains with demons, like wizards who have been granted power by an Abyssal Lord. In addition to whatever dark knowledge they've been given, they also get a Quasit servant who waits until they die to drag their spirit to the Abyss. Or if you worshipped a god that resides in the Abyss, though if that's the case you'd most likely be chaotic evil yourself. And something I think I should stress here, because I don't think I explained it right in other videos, is that you don't need to be from the prime material plane to become a petitioner. Even if you're a planar, which means you're a mortal who was born and raised in the outer planes, when you die, you'll become a petitioner of whichever plane best fits your alignment, or to the realm of whatever god you were devoted to. But if you'd rather go to the Abyss now instead of waiting to die, you could enter through the portal in Plague-Mort, the Abyss's gate town. The Outlands, the plane of true neutrality in the middle of the Great Wheel, contains a gate town to each of the other outer planes in a ring around the Outlands border. Each of these gate towns contains a portal, thus their name, and reflects the character of the plane the portal leads to. Though due to the phenomenon known as cosmic realignment, if these towns reflect the character of the respective plane too closely, they'll be swallowed up by the plane, and a new town will develop to take their place. For many gate towns, this is something the denizens want, though for a place like Plague-Mort, life would probably get worse than it already is if it got sucked up by the Abyss. The people of Plague-Mort generally choose to live here because they want to benefit from the dark powers the Abyss offers, but if they wanted to live in the Abyss, then they could just enter the portal. So I gather that they don't want that. Plague-Mort is a town of treachery, oppression, pain, and decay, where everyone is eagerly looking for opportunities to kill each other for power. Though, despite all that, it's still a safer place to live than in the actual Abyss. Plague-Mort is actually quite similar between 2nd and 5th edition. The only major differences are who rules the town, the gate, and a few details that 5th edition adds. Plague-Mort is a town that demonstrates how the Abyss itself works. The strong thrive and do what they want with the weak. And 5th edition adds the fact that the townsfolk are constantly vying to supplant the Archlector for the power and access to the Demon Lords that position provides, making it quite an unstable dictatorship that requires an iron fist to maintain, which the Archlector achieves through his own personal militia known as the Hounds. In 2nd edition, the Hounds are comprised of tieflings, alufines, and cambions. In 5th edition, they're all demons. The Archlector, according to 2nd edition, is a tiefling priest named Biri Yarmaril, and the Archlector in 5th edition is a Bariar named Bex. The portal, known as the Pit, emanates the whispers of demon lords that make their way to Bex's ears, telling him the names of mutinous townfolk. The Hounds then wrangle this traitor and throw them into the pit, and in return out pops a new demon to join the ranks of the Hounds to make the Archlector's position even stronger. In 2nd edition, the Archlector is intent on pitching Plague-Mort into the Abyss in exchange for power, and if he fails, he'll be killed. The town is a gray bundle of rotting shacks and ruined buildings on crumbling cobblestone streets, all lying in the shadow of a shining silver fortress atop a colorless hill. It's known as Blightsteel Keep, and it's where the Archlector and the Gate to the Abyss reside. The keep is surrounded by a bubbling moat of black ichor. This demon ichor also oozes from the sewers of the town, corrupting local wildlife, transforming them into grotesque fiends. Disease is a common sight in this city, probably on account of the ichor, and those who die here have a tendency not to stay dead, as undead are also common here. 2nd edition has it that Plague-Mort is inhabited mainly by humans, tieflings, orcs, gnolls, ogres, and of course the alufines and cambions that make up the Hounds. In 5th edition, there's a higher proportion of demons, and also the undead. Plague-Mort contains an ancient, out-of-use temple to Ogma, god of knowledge. They say there's an even older, darker temple beneath that one. Plague-Mort is surrounded by desecrated farmlands. The farmers use the continuous supply of corpses that Plague-Mort generates as fertilizer. The plump red fruits that they cultivate are juicy and delicious, but many are marked by blue pustules that, if not pruned in time, burst and spoil surrounding crops and cause the dead to rise from the soil. Plague-Mort wasn't the first gate town to the Abyss, as others have gotten sucked in before, and with each realignment, two things remain unmoved: Blightsteel Keep and the portal within it. In 5th edition, the portal is an actual pit, an inky sinkhole churning in a locked chamber within the keep. Every so often, hordes of demons come rampaging through the pit to cause destruction and mayhem in the town, and fending them off is essentially the only time the citizens of Plague-Mort band together. It's believed that these incursions are punishments for holiness and kindness within the town, so the townsfolk make sure to keep a watch out for good-aligned creatures, so that they can hurl them into the pit before an incursion happens. In 2nd edition, Blightsteel Keep has 3 archways, 2 that lead inside the keep, and one that is the gate to the Abyss, where you can see the blasted planescape of the Plane of Infinite Portals, the first layer. The gate, and the entire keep itself, is entwined in razorvine, so you've got to be careful, or you'll cut yourself going through. The Plane of Infinite Portals is the first layer of the Abyss, and most people who travel to the Abyss will see it. This is one of the layers without any ruler, which are known as open layers, or contested layers. Instead, it's ruled by various mobs of demons who use the scattered iron fortresses that dot the layer as their strongholds. Before, I said I'll mostly be using 2nd edition as my source material, but 3rd and 4th edition each have a book dedicated to the Abyss, each book providing details on many layers, so I would be remiss not to make full use of them for the following sections of the video. I'll go through the layers in order, every last one there is to talk about, which is 114, providing detail in proportion to how much detail exists on them. So some layers will get several minutes, and some will get a few seconds. The Plane of Infinite Portals is also called Pazunia, because in 3rd edition, the Abyssal Lord Pazuzu, also known as Pazrael, rules the skies here. But just the skies. Other demon lords inhabit this layer too, which calls into question what exactly it means to be a demon lord if multiple demon lords can inhabit a single layer. Especially when the Demonomicon, which is 4th edition, explicitly says that one of the qualifications for becoming a demon lord is to take command of an abyssal layer. But even that book still considers Zuggtmoy and Juiblex demon lords even though they both share a layer, and have long struggles to take complete control over it. So I guess you could say that an abyssal lord is a very powerful demon that is at least in the running for control over a layer? Or you could say that the lore of D&D is an absolute mess that struggles to be consistent even within a single edition. Or you could look on the bright side of things and say that the lore of D&D, offering several conflicting ideas, is actually a good thing. It gives you, as a DM, options for which you like best, and allows you to provide your players with conflicting accounts of reality, which boosts realism. And while that is sometimes the spirit in which lore is written, it's more often not. Usually, it's written like it's intended to be the official canon, but it's in conflict with other official canon, and even sometimes with itself. Anyway, the rulership of the Plane of Infinite Portals is contested by several demon lords. There's Pazuzu, at least in 3rd edition. In 2nd edition, his layer is Terramore, the 503rd layer. Pazuzu is known as the Lord or Prince of the lower aerial kingdoms. Pazuzu is secretly an Obyrith, and looks like a demonic hawkman, so his form has changed over the eons to be less creepy, otherworldly Obyrith and more tanar'ri passing. In 3rd edition, not only does he rule the skies of the first layer, but of all the layers of the Abyss. And the one layer he outright controls is the 503rd layer, just like in 2nd edition. What he loves above all is corrupting innocence and purity, consuming them and leaving behind bitterness and cruelty. So of course his favorite prey is mortals, as demons don't have much innocence or purity to offer him. He likes to offer aid to those in need that at first seems beneficial, but leads to great evil and suffering. Pazuzu also goes by the names Pazrael, Imdugud, and Typhon, and saying any of his names 3 times in a row creates an unholy link between you, allowing him to appear before you. So I guess I'm about to see him. The other demon lords that vie over control of this layer are Aldanach, the Lady of Change, Baltazau, retired general of the Blood War who watches over the Pit to Hallow's Heart, which is Fraz-Urb'luu's lair, Eblis of the Unbended Knee, and Mastafal, the Hunting Sovereign. The Plane of Infinite Portals is a dim, barren hellscape wasteland baking beneath a bloated red sun. It's a plane of red dust, bone, and rust. In my mind, it's a bit like Hellfire Peninsula from World of Warcraft. The landscape is dotted by innumerable holes and gigantic iron fortresses, most of which look alien and bizarre, being of Obyrith make. Each of the holes and pits are portals to deeper layers of the Abyss, thus the name Plane of Infinite Portals. One of these pits, called the Grand Abyss, is so deep, containing so many other portals, that it's considered a layer in its own right. The Plane of Infinite Portals is the crossroads of the Abyss, and also a primary staging point for the Blood War. Mawlidai are commonly found here, rounding up deserters and pressing visitors into service in the war. They're taken to Styros, a sullen, muddy garrison town on the banks of the river Styx, where the Mawlidai and Babaus ship off their captives to fight on some other lower plane. Anybody within 50 leagues of the town is considered a deserter and rounded up for the next shipment. The river Styx itself flows throughout the layer, splitting up into many tributaries that flow off to the other lower planes, but also down the pits into other layers of the Abyss. 3rd edition has it that rather than chaotic evil petitioners mostly going to the Mountain of Woe on the 400th layer and forming as larvae to be judged by the Nalfeshni, most of them materialize on Pazunia as mains. The most important place in this layer, for its invaluable contribution to the Blood War, are the Lakes of Molten Iron, a series of different-colored, perpetually smoldering lakes, where the tanar'ri forge their weapons in the metal used to bolster the fortresses of Pazunia. The Beatezu have at multiple times attempted to lay siege to the Lakes of Molten Iron in order to cripple the Abyss's war machine. Another important place in this layer is the Broken Reach. It's one of the iron fortresses of the layer, founded by a succubus named Red Shroud, who rules with an iron grip. It's a rallying point for the Blood War, a place for the strong to gather and for the weak to be devoured. Though Red Shroud keeps the place peaceful for the most part, combat is not allowed within the walls unless it's Red Shroud doing the killing, though death matches happen all the time just outside. Above ground, the Reach is a set of crumbling towers surrounded by trenches, walls, and spiked barricades. The important parts are underground. The portal to Plague-Mort is here, beneath the main hall. Visitors powerful or rich enough to earn Red Shroud's attention get to enjoy lavishly decorated and hugely expensive luxury rooms. So if you're the right kind of person, your first impression of the Abyss after coming in from Plague-Mort can actually be kinda nice, though you never can be sure when Red Shroud is going to grow bored of you and have you killed. One of the largest fortresses in this layer is called Gallows Gate, and it's the ramshackle home of a Marilith named Duranda, where most visitors are eaten, but they're very welcoming to the Doomguard. Vanillon is another iron fortress, which guards the pit leading to Shendilavri, the 570th layer. Something different about Vanillon is that it's not a fortress constructed by Obyriths, and actually looks quite classically high fantasy, a stronghold which you might find in Faerun, for example. It was designed by Malcanthet, the Abyssal Lord who holds the title of Queen of the Succubi, and it houses her favored consort, whatever demon lord that may be at any given time, as the position changes frequently. Currently, that's Mastafal, a handsome fiend with bright red skin, 4 arms, and the horns of an ibex, known as the Hunting Sovereign. Another point of interest is Aldanak's Egg, where the wooden-skinned demon lord Aldanak resides. It's located right next to the entrance to the Grand Abyss, the 4th layer. She's known as the Lady of Change because she delights in corrupting and perverting the pure and the innocent. Her followers abduct good-aligned people and creatures such as paladins and unicorns and take them to her iron fortress where she transforms them into experimental fiendish monstrosities. In 4th edition, Pazunia is called the Plane of 1,000 Portals, or the Plane of Yawning Pits, and Pazuzu actually rules the layer uncontested. In addition to the desolate badlands of red dust, there are sky islands, chunks of free-floating earth known as the Overrealm that serve as the only sources of fresh water in the layer. One of these sky islands, called the Bastion of Skycleave, is chained to the ground above the cursed town of Razorforge. Another sky island, or earth moat, is Lord's Rook, and this is where Pazuzu keeps his palace, carved deep inside the floating island. Also in 4th edition, Plague-Mort apparently crossed over into the Abyss 1,000 years ago, and can be found in this layer. The largest structure in this layer, at least in 4th edition, is the Great Ziggurat of Oth-Magruloth, an ancient site of Obyrith origin that the tanar'ri fear to go near. There's an earth moat named Eothor that eclipses the sun of Pazunia once every millennia. This eclipse lasts for several days, and when it happens, the remaining Obyrith lords, who call themselves the Queen's Enclave due to the fact that they're ruled by an Obyrith known as the Queen of Chaos, crawl up from their lairs to hold council. There's a sprawling dungeon complex beneath the ziggurat that's said to culminate in the Well of Entropy, a portal said to be the only remaining connection to the Obyrith's former realm. 4th edition also details a few of the pits to the other layers. The Angorogo crevasse lies, strangely for the parched wasteland of Pazunia, in a vast ice sheet. The crevasse leads to Soulfreeze, the 566th layer. The Pool of Madness is a shadowy pool only 5 feet deep. Diving in leads to the Shadow Sea, the 69th layer. The Chasm of Rathahaz leads to Toramor, the 503rd layer of the Abyss. The chasm contains a tangled lattice of rope bridges, wooden ladders, and jangling chains, and is lined with areas of winged demons loyal to Pazuzu. Citadel Uggot is an iron fortress constructed by devils in one of their advances into this layer. There's a pit in the center of the citadel leading to a dozen abyssal layers. The fetid pit of Vukorcha is a sweltering salt mire where the air is thick with biting insects. The pit here leads to the Steaming Fen, the 14th layer. Sotholo is a ruined town perched over a large sinkhole leading to Vorganund, the 52nd layer. It's filled with servants of Yeenoghu, gnolls that sell lesser demons to the highest bidder. Driller's Hives is the 2nd layer of the Abyss. It's a horrible place filled with gargantuan insect hives eternally at war with one another. The lair has noxious air that transforms visitors into insect creatures themselves, though paladins appear to be immune. Those who manage to return from this place without turning into monstrous insects or dying often return half-mad. Ecolids, a type of Obyrith shaped roughly like wolf-sized ant spider scorpions, are known to live here. The lord of this lair is Tharzax, the Chattering Prince, demon lord of poison. The third lair, called the Forgotten Land, steals memories, so that visitors forget where they've come from, where they've been, and what they've seen, though undead and automatons are immune, so they're relied upon to report what this lair is like. Demons are immune to the damaging effects that many lairs have, such as fire, lightning, and poison, but they aren't immune to this lair's memory loss, which means this lair is mostly abandoned. It's an eerie place full of empty, pristine cities and other liminal spaces. The few creatures that do live here are reason stealers, oozes that feed off the invisible memories floating in the air of the lair, and vasuthants, which are basically undead orbs of dark shadow that drain away light and life. The lord of this lair is Zissia, the Ungrasped, demon lord of confused and malevolent ignorance. The fourth lair is the Grand Abyss, an infinitely deep and cavernous crevasse with countless portals to other lairs along its walls. Bridges span the cleft in many places, and towers have been carved into the walls of the chasm. These bridges usually connect a portal on one side of the crevasse to a portal on the other side. Falling rocks and corpses are common, and despite it being an endless pit, if you fall here, you're likely to come to a fatal landing due to the bridges and many precipices and outcroppings. 3rd edition says that the Grand Abyss was created by Obyriths, who were magically tunneling deep into the plane of infinite portals, but accidentally created, or perhaps unveiled, an endless pit. 4th edition says that the Grand Abyss, they are called the Blood Rift, was created when Demogorgon, obox-ob, Orcus, and Baphomet were fighting over the seed of evil the Obyriths had created and sent it plummeting back to the heart of the abyss, ripping a rift through every layer down. In 2nd edition, it needs no creation story. It just exists as another layer like all the other layers do. So in 3rd and 4th edition then, the Grand Abyss is essentially an infinite crevasse in the plane of infinite portals, with many portals inside it. It's only called a layer arbitrarily. Personally, I'm not a fan. In my mind, if a layer has a hole in the ground that's infinite, that's still just part of that layer. I think what should separate layers is the necessity of portal travel, and that if two places exist within the same overall space, the same map, then they shouldn't be considered different layers. Unlike the portals in the plane of infinite portals, some of which are one-way and some are two-way, all of the portals in the Grand Abyss are two-way, and most of them are guarded by demons. And like the first layer, the Grand Abyss is contested, with no one ruler. Rather than demon factions and Abyssal Lords exerting control by conquering large swaths of territory, they vie for control over portals. A demon known as the Guardian of the Gates flies from bridge to bridge, challenging those attempting to pass through the portals. The Guardian of the Gates is a Cluricheer, a type of tanar'ri added in 3rd edition that is even more powerful than Balor's. Though because the Grand Abyss is infinitely deep, the Guardian of the Gates is rarely seen. But when he is seen, he kills everyone. It doesn't matter if they're also demons. Because of this, and because all the rest of the tanar'ri are in constant battle on this layer, rulership over portals frequently changes hands. The original lord of the Grand Abyss was an Obyrith named Asima, whose orders the Guardian of the Gates is still acting on. In 4th edition, the Grand Abyss is not contested, and is known as the Blood Rift because the Blood River, seemingly a renamed river Styx, flows down into it from Bazunia, creating an ever-present blood-red mist in the air. The seed of evil is lurking at the infinite depths of the Blood Rift, but an unknown magic prevents any creature powerful enough to claim the seed from entering the lair, which includes demon lords. Unfortunately for 4th edition's consistency and my sanity, the Blood Rift does have a demon lord, and these two contradictory details are just one page apart. How the hell did that make it to print? Well, ignoring that, the demon lord is Phraxus the Decayed, Lord of Misery. Another thing 4th edition does, for reasons, is combine Yugoloths and tanar'ri into the same category. They're all just demons. So in 2nd edition terms, Phraxus would be an Ultraloth, called Anthraxis in 2nd edition. Along the same lines of smushing Yugoloths and demons together, in 4th edition the Tower of Kin Oin is located here, rather than in the Grey Waste. And what really calls to attention that the Blood Rift, as imagined here, is not worthy of being considered a separate layer, is that the Tower of Kin Oin stretches all the way out of the Blood Rift and dominates the sky of the plane of infinite, or shall I say, 1,000 portals. But it's this impossibly tall tower, which appears to be the spine of some long-dead titanic entity that Phraxus rules from. Other locations of note in 4th edition's Blood Rift include the Sepulchre of Midian Claris, the Tumulus of Abhorrence, and the city of Morglandar. Midian Claris was the previous demon lord, or should I say Yugoloth lord, of this lair, whom Phraxus killed to take his position for himself. The Tumulus of Abhorrence is the burial mound of Asima, the long-dead Obyrith lord, whose body remains undecaying. The Guardian of the Gates protects the entrance, and so far no one has gotten in. But her barrow is said to contain a mosaic revealing the identity of the 12 Obyrith lords, which of course in-universe are mostly secret. Morglandar is a bustling city of commerce, vice, and debauchery carved into the walls of the rift 20 miles down near the base of the wasting tower of Kin Oin. The city is governed by a group of demon magistrates known as the Blight Lords, but its true masters are the members of a mysterious council of elder demons spawned by Tharizdun known as the Priory of Rot. While there are thousands of flayed bodies hanging from chains above the city, travelers are actually welcome here, and can expect to be slightly safer than in most other parts of the Abyss, because commerce is the city's most important concern. The city has 5 districts. The Spray is the busy transport district around a harbor formed by the Blood River, known as the Stomach. Beggar's Fall is the poor part of town along the cliff edges. The Malakovian Hive is the oldest part of town. It's a labyrinthine set of tunnels and caverns carved into the bedrock. Riftwatch is the affluent part of town on the other side of the chasm, and the Anvil is a remote section of the city of vaulted caverns where the laborers live. Wormblood, the 5th layer, infects all visitors with a form of mummy rot that destroys the body from within and bypasses magical protections. Definitely a layer to avoid. The rulership of this layer is contested. The 6th layer is called the Realm of a Million Eyes, and it's the layer of beholders and beholderkin. Its lord is the chief goddess of the beholder pantheon, the Great Mother. It's a layer of countless twisting tunnels with eyes and eye stalks protruding from the walls. These are all the eyes of the Great Mother herself. Due to the complete narcissism and hatred of other beholders that is characteristic of their race, the inhabitants of this realm are constantly trying to kill one another, as well as any demons or visitors that enter the lair. The 7th layer, known as the Phantom Plane, or Kirakanin, is actually sealed off from the inside. Extraordinary magical ability would be required to lift the magical seals locking this layer. Its ruler is Sessanic, demon lord of lizardfolk, who worship him and inhabit this layer. The 8th layer, called the Skin Shedder, corrupts the alignment of all who enter to chaotic evil within just a few days. The only ones immune to this are tieflings. Who knows why? This layer is ruled by Velispila, the Flensed Marquess, demon lord of finery and ostentatious ceremony. Burning Water is an ocean of acid inhabited by stony creatures that look like lobsters, shellfish, and armored fish. This layer has no ruler. The 10th layer is called That Hellhole, named by Gorban the Dwarf after a visit of 3 minutes. It's a layer of pure predation and cannibalism, where the only food is other sentient creatures. The moment you step inside, hordes of ravenous creatures with sharp teeth try to eat you, as well as each other, as Gorban found out. This layer has no ruler. Molerat is a dank layer of tunnels and eternal darkness where the tanar'ri hunt each other by sense of smell. Rulership of this layer is contested. 12 Trees, the 12th layer, a place of dark clouds and roiling thunder, is the site of an ancient dark ritual. Eons ago, 12 astral divas were tricked into coming to this layer by the tanar'ri under the pretense of a peace council. They were then tied to 12 massive trees and sacrificed to the abyss. This ritual has suffused the layer with evil energies, and the death screams of the divas still reverberate throughout the layer, so loud that it makes conversation impossible. Tanar'ri from all over the abyss make the pilgrimage to 12 Trees to commemorate the ritual, and to make use of the aura of magical amplification that the ritual site provides. Most of the demons that inhabit this layer seem to be in a euphoric haze of religious ecstasy, basking in the evil magics that permeate the air, which actually make this layer kind of easy to safely traverse, as these demons are too drugged up to pay you any attention. Members of the Doomguard, a faction of Sigil, have been contracted by demons to build ships of chaos, flying dreadnoughts capable of moving from plane to plane. These ships run on the energy of crushed spirits and emanate chaotic auras intended to disrupt the orderly formations of the Beatezu armies, and it's here that the Doomguard is building them. Blood Tor is a lair where visitors are haunted with bad luck. because it's ruled by Bashaba, the Maid of Misfortune. But it's also the home of Umberlee, the Bitch Queen, evil goddess of the sea. Both Bashaba and Umberlee are gods, and Umberlee rules the vast reddish ocean of this layer. So I guess it's an exception to the rule that the layers of the Abyss don't have separate realms within them. Or perhaps there still aren't separate realms even though two different gods live here, as there are other realms throughout the Outer Planes where multiple gods live. This layer is the site of an ancient Beatezu incursion, one of their greatest successes early in the Blood War, possibly before Bashaba made this place her home, otherwise you'd figure their incursion wouldn't have been successful. The Steaming Fen is a vast, foul ocean out of which a colossal mountain arises. The Queen of Chaos, the Queen of the Obyriths, rules this layer from her giant labyrinthine castle carved within the mountain. Death's Reward is the 17th layer, ruled by Abraxas the Unfathomable, Demon Lord of magic words, arcane secrets, and talismans. The 6th Pyre is ruled by Kardum, Lord of the Balors, Demon Lord of Fire, and, unsurprisingly, Balors. This layer used to be ruled by Ansatif the Befouler, who now resides in the 73rd layer. The Iron Wastes is a bitterly cold layer of eternal winter and miles-deep ice, illuminated by a single distant light no brighter than a moon. It's a layer of blizzards, glaciers, icy rifts, and frost giants. It's inhospitable by most standards, but it contains one of the most coveted gates in the Abyss, a portal leading to Jotunheim on Isgard, which attracts the inhabitants of the Abyss to this layer. But even more importantly, the gate opens near the roots of Yggdrasil, which is one of the great pathways between planes, like the River Styx. But unlike the River Styx, Yggdrasil provides access to the upper planes. The ruler of this layer is Kotschtchie, the Prince of Wrath, Demon Lord of Frost Giants, Wrath, and Rage. Kotschtchie resides in the Glacier Citadel, an ice fortress carved into the moving ice between two towering peaks. The Iron Waste has a few other notable locations. Perhaps the deepest icy rift in this layer is known as Black Steam Rift, whose depths disappear into leagues of darkness. A giant creature lurks at the bottom of the depths named Gog-Bahamul, who periodically emits terrible screams from its multiple mouths. Frost giants are stationed nearby to throw mammoth and walrus flesh into the pit to appease the monster. A somewhat similar place is the Howling Rift. This jagged rift contains icy tunnels deep within the crevasse where countless ice worms dwell and multiply. Volstad is a small town that serves as the primary gathering place for Kotschtchie's many tribes of devoted frost giants who squabble and kill each other over disagreements of which tribe is Kotschtchie's favorite. In 4th edition, this layer supposedly has more portals than any layer aside from the Plane of Infinite Portals, but that strikes me as yet another of 4th edition's blunders, the writers likely forgetting that they said the Blood Rift contains a portal to every other abyssal layer. But anyway, in ages past, Demogorgon cast an Obyrith lord by the name of Veshvoriak into this layer, imprisoning him under the ice. Kotschtchie, who regularly goes on rampages across the layer, his usual path of destruction is called the Road of Fury, often unearths new portals as his fists level mountains and glaciers. On one such occasion, he unearthed the Eye of Veshvoriak, a gigantic eye peering out from the depths of an icy chasm. Veshvoriak is said to know the secrets of the Abyss better than any demon lord except for Dagon, and so demons and mortals alike seek him out in the hopes to gain power and dark knowledge in exchange for their services, which usually include tasks that Veshvoriak hopes will free him from the ice. Malignibula, which is my shot at one of the many ways that I can imagine this being pronounced, is a layer of acid-strewn clouds without any solid ground, though the clouds do harden occasionally. The ruler, Lissa-Air the Noxious, Demon Lord of Poison Gas, is very similar to the layer itself, being a swirling funnel of malevolence and poison mist. When the solid clouds dissipate and the creatures previously standing on them fall through the poison sky, it's said that they're consumed by Lady Lissa-Air. Sholo Tavoth, the Fields of Consumption, is a bit similar to that hellhole, where it's a layer of all-consuming hunger and predation, but a bit more detail exists for this one. It's ruled by Turaglas, the Ebon Maw, Demon Lord of Hunger and Consumption. Turaglas is an amorphous tide of flesh replete with hundreds of rasping mouths. The lair, meant as a prison for Turaglas, acts in response to his activity. When Turaglas slumbers, the lair is sealed off from the rest of the Abyss, but as Turaglas stirs, the lair opens once more. The north, west, and south of the Fields of Consumption are ringed by a hideous mountain range called the Gnashing Crags, which resemble teeth. Ancient tales say that sometimes one can catch a glimpse of a matching mountain range descending from the murky clouds above, forming a mouth of a truly colossal being, perhaps of the Abyss itself. Passes through the mountains are jagged and precarious, The slightest drop of blood in this layer draws the attention of hordes of ravenous insects and predators. The air smells overwhelmingly of rot. Everywhere, sinkholes filled with acid open and close, slowly digesting their victims. To the east are plains of cracked earth, housing enormous purple worms below. Continue east to find the tongue-shaped Valthuan Plateau. There are actually towns and even a city upon this plateau, called Tan Shavas, though the civilians feed only upon each other. Travelers to this layer find that ordinary food no longer satisfies, and begin to feel strong cravings for sentient flesh. To the southeast of Valthuan is the Ravenous Wood, a forest where the soil is rich with blood, the tree sap is actually bile, and the sharp serrated leaves reach out to cut any passerby. Eventually the forest becomes an acidic swamp, which becomes an enormous sea of gastric juices, which eventually drops off into unknowable depths, where Tharizdun slowly claws its way toward consciousness. Azzagrat is not just a single layer, but rather it's 3 layers that all make up one realm ruled by Graz'zt, the Dark Prince, demon lord of tyrants, despots, guile, and debauchery. The triple realm of Azzagrat is perhaps the safest place in the whole Abyss, at least in reputation, where travelers are drawn to the markets and pleasure palaces seeking what can be found nowhere else, and demons put on a veneer of courtly civility. But make no mistake, Azzagrat holds as many dangers as most other layers of the Abyss. It's just that its danger is hidden beneath a cosmopolitan surface. The 45th layer is Rawend. It's a muted, subdued place, where nothing seems to stand out and everything seems equally gray. Travelers just coming from this layer have difficulty reporting what they saw. It's also home to many viper trees. This, in combination with the muted grayness of the place, causes some people to suspect that this layer was originally a part of the Grey Waste, until Graz'zt brought it here. Viper trees are what they sound like, trees with snakes for branches. The branches can even disconnect from the trees and follow you. The biggest concentration of them is in Zrintor, the Viper Forest. It's a sprawling, dangerous place that's hard to leave alive. Traveling through Zrintor at night is much safer than the day, because you have to carry a torch to see anything, and the Viper trees don't like fire. 4th edition describes Rawend as a humid, arboreal realm of alien flora with a disquieting lack of animal life that visitors often mistake for the Feywild, or Arvindor. The 46th layer, Barugund, also has strange lighting. Here the sunlight comes up from the ground rather than the sky, so the shadows are columns of darkness that rise into the sky. 4th edition describes it as arid moorland becoming desert as you get closer to the salt swamp, which is home to a coven of hags under the rule of the night hag Zelamis, to whom the local demons pay allegiance, rather than to Graz'zt. The 47th layer, Vorzit, is lit by a blue sun, where heat and cold are inverted. Flames glow blue and purple instead of red and orange, and inflict cold damage, and cold causes heat damage. The strange light of this layer makes creatures hard to recognize. The 46th layer, Barugund, is easiest to reach through the 45th layer, rather than through the plane of infinite portals or anywhere else in the Abyss, and Vorzit can only be reached through the other layers of Azzagrat, though 4th edition has it that this layer can be reached through the Blood Rift. It also describes this layer as sweeping grassland and rolling hills that give way to the Bay of Choking Bile. Azzagrat's 3 layers are constantly overlapping and moving through one another, with gates opening between them frequently and randomly. These gates resemble ovens of green fire, like the Floo network in Harry Potter, but unlike in Harry Potter, the fire actually burns. And to make matters worse, there are many decoy gates that are just ovens. The River of Salt also binds these layers, as it travels through all 3. It's a sparkling crystalline mass of moving minerals that are somehow both liquid and solid at the same time. Another thing that binds these layers is Zelatar, the capital city, which simultaneously exists in all 3 layers at once, something that confounds visitors but seems entirely natural and normal to the demonic denizens. It's a city of shifting doors and entryways, even more than Sigil. Graz'zt resides in the Argent Palace, a structure of meticulous cleanliness containing 66 towers and 100 cold, mirrored halls. The citizens try to avoid this place, and receiving an invitation is usually a death sentence. In 3rd edition, Zelatar has 3 districts, one on each layer, but the Argent Palace is visible in all layers. Personally, I think this kind of makes it seem like it's not one city that exists on all 3 layers, but 3 different cities that the Argent Palace simultaneously exists in. Anyway, the district on Rawend is called Fogtown, and it's where the poor laborers live. Colorless, tasteless, chalky fungus is grown in the featureless plains just outside the city, and it's the city's primary food source. The district on Barrowgund is called Galengast. It's the heart of Zelatar, and it's connected to Fogtown through a vast undermarket called the Queen's Causeway. Galengast is packed with the villas of demonic nobles and thriving markets and inns. The paving stones of the city block the sunlight that otherwise comes up from the ground, but absent stones here and there illuminate the streets. There's a somewhat secret entrance to the Infinite Staircase near the chapter house of the Planewalkers Guild, which is a guild headquartered on the Infinite Staircase. The staircase is an impossible, interdimensional pathway of literal stairs that pierce through time and space. Each landing on the Infinite Staircase contains a portal to a different city, but each of these doors is locked by a riddle, a puzzle, or some other mystery held by the Lelendi, the Snake Woman of Selûne. A grass clearing outside Galengast's walls called the Hollowfield Grounds holds monthly tournaments where combatants compete in death matches in the hopes of becoming an instant celebrity within the city. Zelatar's third district is called Darkflame. It's the most remote of the three, and acts as a haven for those who don't want to be found. Other towns in Azzagrat include Samora, Allagash, and Tornbend. Samora is a haven of pleasure in Vorzit where mortals come to experience the ecstasy of demonic debauchery, and demons come to avoid the blood war. Samora is ruled by a succubus named Moretta. She resides in an underground bunker and pleasure den called the Counting House. Allagash was a town in Rawend housing a clandestine breeding program meant to provide an edge over the Beatezu, but it's recently been destroyed by an army of undead under the command of Orcus. Graz'zt's demons pushed back the invasion, but the depths of the city still contain unknown undead monstrosities. Tornbend is also an abandoned town, which used to be an active center of commerce. As I already mentioned, Graz'zt is the ruler of Azzagrat. He's perhaps the most human of all the demon lords, though still exceedingly evil. Like really all demon lords, he constantly thirsts for more power. But unlike many demon lords, he's actually really good at achieving it. After all, he has 3 layers of the Abyss. That's more than the other demon lords can boast. He also has plans in motion to bring Occipitus, the 507th layer, into his domain. And he sent one of his many sons to Earth, which I'm just learning now is actually more commonly pronounced Oith, the world of the Greyhawk campaign setting, in a plot to bring that entire world in as a new layer of Azzagrat. So far, the plan has been quite successful, with his son Euz having conquered a large amount of territory and being worshipped as a demigod. Graz'zt is a master manipulator, a capricious lord who enjoys keeping his subjects guessing, rewarding them one moment and torturing them the next. In 4th edition, he was originally a devil, a trusted advisor to Asmodeus. He went to the Abyss in search of the Seed of Evil, wresting control of the 47th layer from the demon lord Varen, followed by the 46th layer and the 45th layer. After encountering resistance from Orcus and Demogorgon, Graz'zt decided to remain in the Abyss to protect his conquered territory, and rejected his devilish heritage and became a demon. Now, in addition to bringing in Occipitus, he's looking to expand Azzagrat to the 48th layer. Skykalak, the Ocean of Tears, also called the Neribdian Vast, is a desert-like layer with no ruler, though it probably will have one soon if Graz'zt gets his way. Shadanon is the 49th layer, ruled by Rixali, Queen of the Shadow Demons, Demon Lord of Secrets, and also Shadow Demons, of course. She is actually Graz'zt's sister. You might be wondering, if most demons are the reformed spirits of dead mortals, or larvae that sprout from the Abyss itself, how exactly does a demon even have siblings? Well, many demons are in fact born from other demons. But in this case, Rixali and Graz'zt are the offspring of an Obyrith lord known as Pale Knight, who is the progenitor of a substantial number of demons. Vorganund is the 52nd layer, and its rulership is contested, and that's about all there is to say about it. The only information on the Phage breeding grounds, the 53rd layer, comes from 4th edition, so take it with a grain of salt. This layer is a putrescent layer of winding, mucus-lined tunnels, the insides of colossal intestines of the long-dead primordial Ramenos, who is not dead nor a primordial in 2nd edition, and is the ruler of a different layer that I'll talk about in a bit. This layer, though, is apparently not even ruled by a demon, but by a slod known as Ore Nas. Countless half-conscious thralls are entombed in the walls for slod broodmothers to implant their embryos inside. Torturous Truth is the layer of Alvarez, the Purging Duke, demon lord of Inquisition and torture. Alvarez is famous for his cruelty and brutality, and for his inventive torture methods. If a tanar'ri starts acting too orderly, Alvarez and his team of inquisitors will question them. The court of the Spider Queen is ruled by Lolth, demon queen of spiders. She's the primary deity of the Drow pantheon. Lolth looks like a half spider, half drow, or drider. But she doesn't always appear in her drider form. She frequently takes on the appearance of a regular, although imperious, drow. She's a schemer and manipulator, seething with malice and contemptuous of any beings with more power than her. She encourages and rewards treachery, so long as she isn't the one getting screwed over. The Court of the Spider Queen isn't her main lair, and there really isn't any information about it. The Demonweb Pits, also called Lolth's Web, is Lolth's primary domain, where countless spiders, drow, yochlol, and other demons reside. This lair is a convoluted place that resembles a giant web. 4 strands of tunnels wind around within an infinite mist, looping simultaneously under and over each other in a confusing circle. These tunnels are about 20 feet wide and made of polished stone. If you look closely at the stone, you'll notice the shifting forms of twisted bodies and agonized faces of condemned souls trapped within, though in most places sticky webbing covers the walls, forming tube-like corridors. Lolth's Palace is a mobile iron fortress that crawls across the web that these tunnels form. In 3rd edition, this palace is actually a giant mechanical spider named the Ship of Lolth. Doors seemingly leading into the infinite fog can be found throughout these passageways. In actuality, they're portals leading to the countless worlds where Lolth holds power, though I can only imagine some of them are decoy portals and really do just drop off into the mist. All these places the portals lead to are in various stages of being permanently drawn into the lair. Unlike the rest of the Abyss, the Demonweb Pits actually does have physical spell keys. Without possessing special geometric sculptures that Lolth hands out to her favored followers, teleportation here is impossible. If you do manage to get a hold of a key, it'll only allow you to teleport to a specific place or set of places within the lair, with different types and rarities of keys allowing for teleportation to different places and larger sets of places. Some of the locations within Lolth's Web include the Crystal Tower of the Yochlols, the Den of the Acolytes, the Emblem of Abragard, the Fane of Aklavdra, the Venom Sphere Lens, and the Ulgershek Orifice. The Crystal Tower of the Yochlols is a tower of purple crystal inside a tunnel that expands into a vast cavern. 9 Yochlols live here who act as protectors and interrogators of the region of the demon web they occupy. So there isn't just one crystal tower, but several, each demarcating the territory of a cabal of high-ranking Yochlols. The Den of the Acolytes is what it sounds like. It's where Lolth's acolytes study and train to better serve her, hoping to die in her service and be reincarnated as Yochlols. The Emblem of Abragard is a chamber containing intense evil magical energies. In the center of the room, there's a shallow pool of the black blood of Abragard, the primary evil deity of the world of Goldor. Lolth killed him decades ago and is in the process of sucking Goldor into the Demonweb. The Fane of Aklavdra is a citadel within a massive cavern, home to drow warriors and clerics who serve Aklavdra, Lolth's second in command. The Venom Sphere Lens is a massive globe of sloshing flesh that oozes poisonous liquid. It can be used to view any location in the prime material plane. Like the Venom Sphere Lens, the Ulgershek Orifice is also giant and fleshy, but it's a wheezing red sphincter that devours anything inside it, sending it to Ulgershek, the 92nd layer. Most of the other locations listed in this layer in 3rd edition aren't actually in the layer, but are the destinations of the many portals found here. There's one to the Black Fen, a swamp in the prime material plane that Lolth uses as a breeding ground. There are portals to several of Lolth's conquered territories, such as the Kingdom of Kaer Sidai, the drow city of Arelhai Sinlu, the Kingdom of Istvin, which Lolth tried to anchor to the Abyss, but in doing so inadvertently allowed Malgoth, an imprisoned Obyrith Lord, to escape from the Abyss and corrupt the city, so it's now known as the City of Shadows. Another portal leads to Maldev and Candlespire. Maldev is a dwarvish kingdom, the last holdout against Lolth on the world of Goldor, and Candlespire is the nearby 3rd edition home of Kirianseli, drow goddess of vengeance and death. Another portal leads to the night world of Vlad Tolonkov, a sunless world ruled over by a vampire loyal to Conchelsis, the vampire god and demon lord of the 487th layer, who acts as a strategic consultant and lover to Lolth. Another portal leads to the Labyrinth of Arachne, a maze with no exit where Lolth's experimental breeds of spiders prey on whoever she feels like throwing in there. And finally, there's Lolth's Prison, which is an isolated, tiny world where Lolth sends people she doesn't want eaten by spiders, but instead wants to just rot beneath the heat of 5 small suns. In 3rd and 4th edition, the whole layer is called the Demonweb. The Demonweb pits are the dark depths in the infinite mists beneath the Demonweb proper. And in 4th edition, that's where Lolth lurks. And by the way, I don't really like this map of the Demonweb. More than other maps of Abyssal layers, it makes the place look really small. Obviously, this isn't the whole layer, as these tunnels trail off in other directions, but still, every feature this book describes about the layer exists within a rather small dungeon. The Heaving Hills is a swampy layer, half hills and half marshy wastes, that's struck by frequent earthquakes. With each earthquake, the two types of terrain switch places. This layer is dominated by Hezru, the frog-like tanar'ri, as well as frog-hemoths, which are basically giant frog monstrosities with tentacles. The earthquakes frequently reveal strange ruins thought to be the lost cities of the Varangoyne, which are abyss bats. Strangely, both the Fiendish Codex and the Demonomicon list the ruler of this layer as Varangoyne, but that's not the name of a particular demon lord, that's the name for abyss bats. So I guess this layer is ruled by abyss bats? The Swallowed Void is abandoned and airless, and without magical protection, a visitor's blood will quickly boil away. So I guess you don't have to worry about suffocation. Because it's abandoned, it has no ruler. The Gibbering Hollow, also called the Crushing Plane, is a layer so absolutely packed with fiends, particularly Khazmi, Means, and Lemures, which I don't know why there would be Lemures here considering they're Beatezu, but that's what the book says, that they're literally crawling all over each other. Death by suffocation or being crushed are both likely. According to 4th edition, this layer spawns an unusually high number of mains, which is possibly contradictory with 2nd edition in the fact that larvae are what the abyss spawns, not directly mains, but I guess it could exist both ways. It's ruled by Olameg, who came here to satiate his gluttonous cravings, but the mains populate faster than he can eat them. The ice flow is a layer of thin, easily shattered ice over cold, black, rushing water. This layer's cold steals your life energy, so lingering here is a guaranteed death sentence one way or another. The ice flow has no ruler. Sparak is the hunting grounds of the abyss. It's a layer of untamed and untamable wilderness, a dense forest of spiky ferns and tall, skinny mountains filled with an immense variety of animals and magical beasts, as well as mains, Hezru, and other true tanar'ri who enjoy the hunt. All attempts of civilization here fail, and so there is no ruler. Any buildings here rapidly crumble and get swallowed by the layer, turning into natural rock. There's a mountain pool somewhere in this layer that has the power to magically restore youth to the body, but at the cost of sacrificing a portion of your free will to a demon lady named Sunealan, who dwells in the pool. The 72nd layer, Darklight, has the curious and rather unfortunate property that all good-aligned visitors shine like the sun, alerting their presence to the demons of the lair that otherwise wouldn't be sure who to kill or enslave next. Conversely, evil-aligned creatures are wrapped in a fog of darkness. This lair is ruled by Nocticula the Undeniable, demon lord of night. The Wells of Darkness is the graveyard of the abyss. It's also the prison. It's a habitable place, but mostly abandoned except for the occupants trapped within the many inky black pools that litter the stony ground underneath a blue sun. Each well plunges into pure darkness and is said to house a deposed Abyssal Lord or a slain true tanar'ri. The black liquid of the pools magically restrains these prisoners, but allows for minimal amounts of telepathic communication. The pools are all connected by a marble pathway, and it's said that straying from the path incurs the wrath of the abyss itself. The Wells of Darkness is mostly a vast plain, but here and there jagged tors dot the landscape. There's a semi-ruined stone fortress on one of these mountain peaks named Overlook, inhabited by specters and wraiths. Overlook contains a scale model of the entire layer, and supposedly there's some ancient mechanism for controlling the layer, perhaps with the ability to unlock the wells, but no one knows how it works. Some of the prisoners contained within the Wells of Darkness are Ansatif the Befouler, demon lord of the corruption of religious sites and relics, Apep, king of serpents of the pharaonic pantheon, who is believed by that pantheon's followers will end reality, Arix, a mysterious demon prince who has a pact with Bolothamog, an elder evil from the Far Realm, Kibiri, an ancient Obyrith lord who betrayed the Queen of Chaos, Ebulan, one of Graz'zt's generals who was dumped here by Demogorgon, Lazbral Thul the Butcher, a demon lord of torture and bloodletting who killed several other demon lords before being imprisoned, Ma Yuan, the Killer of Gods, a half-dinosaur, half-humanoid being of unknown origin who killed 10 gods before being defeated by Tu-Mu, goddess of the North Star, and Lu Yue, god of epidemics, the rulers of the 300th layer. So few prisoners have ever escaped the Wells of Darkness that they can be counted on one hand. They include Seragal the Ineffable, Demon Lord of the 493rd layer, Shaktari, the Queen of Meriliths, Demon Lord of the 531st layer, Be'aman of the Unhealing Wound, whose still living head hangs from the ceiling of Kotschtchie's Glacier Citadel, and Zizasia the Ungrasped, Demon Lord of the 3rd layer. Smaragd, the 34th layer, is a radiant emerald jungle of damp heat and tribes of fierce hunters. It's a place of serpents, venomous toads, and acidic rain. Hordes of Barlagura also live here. But aside from these dangers, it's a relatively sleepy, benign lair. 2 gods live here, seemingly without having 2 separate realms. Ramanos, the sleeping god of the Bullywugs, resides in a giant hollow tree, and Mershalk, god of the Yuan-Ti, who resides in a snake-infested pit. The Gates of Heaven is ruled by Munkir, the White Guardian, and Nekir, the Black Guardian. Both are listed as Abyssal Lords of the Afterlife and the back door to Paradise. It sounds intriguing, but unfortunately that's all the information there is about this layer. I suppose the writers of D&D intentionally give things evocative names without any further explanation so that DMs can use that as inspiration to create their own lore. In fact, somebody did that with Munkir and Nekir on this Reddit post here. The writers of D&D often take things from real-world religions. In this case, Munkar and Nekir are Islamic angels that test the faith of the dead while they rest in the grave before being able to go to heaven. How that fits into the Abyss, I suppose, is for you to invent. The MSU Tunnels is ruled by Anarizel, the Daring Darkness, Demon Lord of Adventurers. The Blood Shallows is an acidic, blood-red marsh with a white sky and blue clouds, the river Styx running throughout. Areas of high ground are controlled by various Obyriths and minor demon lords. This layer used to be ruled by obox-ob, an Obyrith lord who used to hold the title of Prince of Demons. Confusingly, not only does the term Demon Prince in some editions mean stronger than normal Demon Lord, and in other editions mean not quite as powerful as a Demon Lord, the title Prince of Demons is basically the title claimed by the most powerful Demon Lord in the Abyss. Usually Demogorgon is considered the Prince of Demons. Now, Demogorgon is trying to control this layer, and has several legions here, but he's still not the layer's ruler. Most think that it's because this is just one of those layers that refuses to be ruled, but in reality, a secret aspect of obox-ob still exudes its influence here, so I suppose the rulership is contested. The Gaping Maw is ruled by Demogorgon. In 2nd edition, it's a layer of briny water and rocky prominences. The rocky parts are used as rookeries by flying tanar'ri, while the waters are the home of krakens and Ixitzacitil, which are essentially demonic manta rays. In 3rd edition, the layer is split between 2 distinct halves to reflect Demogorgon's dual nature. Brine flats and endless oceans make up one half, and a primeval continent of dense tropical jungle make up the other. The tropical continent contains a large woodland region known as the Screaming Jungle, where enormous dinosaurs battle for territory against dire apes and barlaguras. Deep within the jungle, on some lost plateau, is a portal to the Guttering Grove, the 90th layer. As the Screaming Jungle gets closer to the sea, it meets an inland bog populated by lizardfolk, troglodytes, Hezru, and Yuan-Ti. After that, the brine flats begin. A low, salt-rich seabed populated by Ixitzacitil, who carve out enormous tunnel complexes in the coral reefs. The capital city of Lemuriak sits near the ocean. It's an overgrown place of crumbling ziggurats filled with tens of thousands of murderous demons. It does not enjoy the relative safety of a city like Zelatar or Morglandar. Coming here is just asking to be ripped apart by hordes of demons, though you may not be immediately killed if you're here for the slave markets, which are some of the largest in the Outer Plains. The ocean of the Gaping Maw is a treacherous place of intense waves and fortresses on top of rocky pinnacles, thrusting high out above the water. Some more well-known of these pinnacle fortresses are the Claws of Beltaresk, Harrowrend, Kolorenth, and the Scabwash Sentinels. The Claws of Beltaresk is one of the largest pinnacle systems in the layer, and is home to the Baelor Beltaresk, Demogorgon's honored agent, as well as Vrox, Hezrus, Glabrezus, and Succubi. Harrowrend is a series of blood-soaked torture chambers overseen by a babau named Charismodus the Carver, where flying demons and seabirds pick at the freshly strung-up corpses of those lucky enough to actually die from their prolonged torture. Kolorinth is a fortress home to another of Demogorgon's champions. This one a corrupted human paladin named Saint Kargoth the Betrayer that Demogorgon made into the first Death Knight. The Scabwash Sentinels is a hollowed-out pair of pinnacles whose insides contain the experiment chambers where Demogorgon's minions attempt to make new demonic hybrids. Farther out to sea, there's a giant whirlpool known as the Stygian Eye. Getting sucked in spits you back out at a random place in the Abyssian Ocean, which is a thing in 3rd edition that is kind of like the River Styx, but connecting all the oceans of the Abyss. So basically, if you get sucked into the Stygian Eye, you'll end up in the sea of a random other layer of the Abyss. And finally for this layer, there's Abysm, Demogorgon's personal fortress. It consists of 2 serpentine towers in the middle of the ocean, 100 miles from Lemuriax. Supposedly, Abysm extends into the next layer, the Shadow Sea, as Dagon and Demogorgon often form pacts to make discoveries about the nature of the Abyss, or experiment to form new demonic creations. Demogorgon, as I already said, is considered the Prince of Demons. It's a self-proclaimed title, but none of the other demon lords are powerful enough to take it from him. He's like a combination between a snake and an ape. He has 2 baboon-like heads, each with its own mind, tentacles for arms, and a reptilian lower torso and tail. Demogorgon's left head is named Eamuel, or maybe it's Amuel, and the right head is Hethrodaya. Both of them wish to claim full control of Demogorgon, but neither are able to, and they also can't kill each other, as they believe that killing one of the heads would kill Demogorgon. So Demogorgon is in eternal conflict with himself. The Shadow Sea is the 89th layer, ruled by Dagon, Prince of the Darkened Depths, Obyrith Lord of creatures of the deep aquatic. This mysterious layer is quite well sealed off from the rest of the Abyss, but not completely. It can normally only be reached through the deepest trenches and chasms of the Gaping Maw. It is an ocean below an ocean. This might mean that it occupies the same space, the same map as the Gaping Maw, but I prefer to think that the only known portals to the Shadow Sea are in the depths of the Gaping Maw, not that they are coterminous. Dagon is said to know the deepest secrets of the Abyss, and so even though this layer is nigh inaccessible, demons still come to him seeking knowledge. He devours most of them, or the many wastrelets that inhabit this layer get to them first. His palace is an amorphous place growing from the sea floor. Wastrelets and other terrible sea creatures aren't the only dangers in this layer. There are also giant clouds of pollution that strip the flesh from all who swim within them. The Guttering Grove is ruled by Ilsidahur, the Howling King, demon lord of Bar Laguras. Ilsidahur is an ally of Demogorgon, and so this layer contains a portal to the Gaping Maw. In 4th edition, that plateau in the 88th layer with the portal to this one used to be its own layer called the Guttering Grove and was ruled by Ilsidahur. Demogorgon conquered it and brought it into the 90th layer, which is here called the Screaming Jungle. The Screaming Jungle and the Gaping Maw, the 88th layer, are collectively called Abysm, just like Rawend, Barugund, and Vorzit all collectively make up Azzagrat. But unlike Azzagrat, Demogorgon's layers exist within the same space as each other. No magical transportation required. The Gaping Maw is the sea portion of Abysm, and the Screaming Jungle is the tropical continent portion. As I already made clear earlier, I am not a fan of when layers are coterminous like this with each other. Why even call them layers? Really, 4th edition, and to a lesser extent 3rd edition, uses the term layer in a similar way that 2nd edition uses the term realm, except layers are even less distinct than realms. But since 4th edition and kind of 3rd edition say that Dagon's lair, the Shadow Sea, is actually just the depths of the Gaping Maw, then in my mind that would all just be considered one layer. Olgershek is the realm of Olgershek, who, according to the only information that exists about him, is not a demon lord and predates the formation of the Great Wheel. But a weird sphincterous maw in the Demonweb pits leads here, so make of that what you will. Layer 99 is an unnamed realm. It was used in an adventure book called Tales of the Outer Planes, basically as a place that's just a random collection of locales. There's the Grey Realm, which is a barren grey desert, or the Lightning Realm, which acts as a battleground between the forces of Orcus and Demogorgon, or the Swirling Realm, which contains a portal to Shedaklah, the 222nd layer, the Yellow Realm, a lush yellow forest of 50-foot tall grass, the Fog Realm, which is an incubation area for demon spawn, the Silver Realm, a place where sound waves are completely absorbed, or the Star Realm, where Kali tortures her prisoners before taking them to Layer 500. The Barrens, the 100th layer, is a desolate wilderness expanse containing the ruins of every civilization that has existed or ever will. The only ruined city that cannot be found here is Sigil. The landscape around the cities constantly fluctuates and shifts, making navigation extremely difficult, if not impossible. According to 4th edition, which is the only place it's described, it's suspected to be a domain of the Astral Sea that fell into the Abyss, and so it operates in a kind of similar way that the Astral Sea does. You have to will yourself towards your destination. Though rather than floating, as you do in the Astral Sea, here willing yourself towards your destination means that without strength of purpose, you will get lost and die in the infinite ruins. This is a layer full of ancient, lost knowledge, but most who come seeking that knowledge never find it. The Barrens is inhabited by Wendigos, cannibals, undead, and demons. The ruler of this layer is Ublave, Queen of Desolation. She enjoys setting the inhabitants of this layer against one another in a constant cycle of violence and destruction. It's thought that Ublave is actually a personification of the seed of evil that lies at the heart of the Abyss. Her center of power is the Fortress of the Forgotten, which appears at random and eludes anyone who wants to find it. The mind of evil is ruled by Shik-Therakpast, creator god of the Yuan-Ti, according to older lore. Actually, this layer is Shik-Therakpast. In an effort to gain ultimate power, he attempted to merge his life essence with the layer, and he succeeded. Kind of. His body was destroyed, and his mind became one with the layer. Though mind melding with a layer of chaos takes a toll, and so it drove him almost completely insane. He is able to use his last sliver of sanity to manifest a new body for himself, which looks like a giant winged ebony serpent. This layer is particularly dangerous because the whole layer is a whirling chaos that truly does have a mind, and an evil one at that, thus the name. And so survival here is impossible. Plus, magic doesn't work here. Thanatos, the 113th layer, is the layer of undeath, but in 4th edition and in 1st edition AD&D, it's the 333rd layer. A lot of the layers of the Abyss contain undead, but this is the layer of undeath. In most D&D lore, this layer is ruled by Orcus, Prince of the Undead, Demon Lord of the Undead, Abyssal Ascension, and Escape from Death. Orcus always appears as a massive, corpulent, winged demon with cloven hooves, but I particularly like his 5th edition version, where his head is the rotted skull of a goat. Orcus covets the realms and power of Graz'zt and Demogorgon, considering them his main rivals. While he isn't as powerful as Demogorgon, and he doesn't have nearly the territory that Graz'zt has, he does have the advantage of being a much more prominent figure in the prime material plane, with more cults dedicated to him than any demon lord. Because of this, Orcus is much closer to ascending to godhood. Personally, because he's widely worshipped, I do consider him a god. In 2nd edition, however, Orcus has been killed by Kiaransali. She took over Thanatos and attempted to expunge his name from existence. She almost succeeded, but Orcus returned from the dead in 3rd edition and took back his lair, forcing Kiaransali to her fortress of Candlespire that I mentioned earlier. Thanatos is a cold layer of ice, thin air, and a black moonlit sky with ash-gray clouds. The moon randomly changes its phase whenever hidden behind a cloud. The layer fatigues mortals into exhaustion and then suffocation if they fail 3 in a row hourly saving throws. Creatures that die in Thanatos are almost immediately and irreversibly risen again as undead. Most of the plane is a frozen tundra where undead roam, but there are 2 major towns, at least according to 2nd edition. Narratir, the city of the dead, is the site of Kiaransali's winter palace. Narratir is carved into the surface of a frozen ocean and surrounded by a moat containing the waters of the river Styx. It's a silent, cold city, home to warring bands of vampires, banshees, and specters. In summer, when Kiaransali isn't ruling, the city is ruled by the ruthless, rotting Jack, who raises taxes, spreads wealth to his friends, and starts killing his opponents. Because of this, a lot of citizens try to leave as summer's coming on. Kiaransali's summer abode is the Forbidden Citadel, contained within the city of Lacrimosa, the Cauldron of Tears, in a dry, hilly region upstream along the river Styx. It's a place of festering flesh, kept warmer than the rest of the layer by rust-red geysers. In winter, Lacrimosa is ruled by a drider named Anista. There's also Sleepless, a Malideus who manages to be in many places at once because he's actually two twins pretending to be a single creature, though he kills anyone who finds this out. 3rd edition adds a few more locations. The city of Straight Curves is a frozen-over port city whose safe appearance woos visitors to come seek refuge here, but its strange geometry makes it so that they never escape. Streets that appear straight loop back on themselves and bend in nonsensical ways. The final hills lay just beyond Lacrimosa. They're filled with crypts containing mummies and liches. The nearby Valley of Crypt Things is a bewildering maze of canyons that leads to the endless maze of Baphomet, the 600th layer. Beyond the final hills, on the periphery of civilized Thanatos, is a sprawling desert of bone meal and incorporeal undead called Oblivion's End. Within this wasteland is Everlost, a tower of bones that serves as Orcus' seat of power. Gulman Thur, off in the middle of the Plains of Hunger, where the undead wander in search of flesh, is a city of narrow avenues full of liches who used to be mortal cultists of Orcus, whose failures at taking control of an undead horde in the Plains of Hunger earned them their transformation into undead thralls. Lash Embrar, the Flickering City, is so named because of the magical energy that forms a sort of aurora above the ancient crumbling city. It's believed that this magic is the lingering effect of Orcus' original domination of the lair thousands of years ago. Orcus Gate is a city of demons. It's named for the gate in the city that connects Thanatos to the plane of infinite portals. Lastly, there's Vadrian, a ruined city avoided by undead and demons and home to several of the Dustmen. Orcus allows them to remain in this lair because he figures their presence and their service of guides attracts mortals to the realm and provides them with a sense of security. But he knows that most mortals who visit usually wind up staying here forever as undead. Slugbed is ruled by Lupercio, or perhaps it's Luperico, because spellings are often inconsistent across editions. In 4th edition, it's Lupercio, in 3rd edition, it's Luperico. In older editions, the 8th layer of the Nine Hells was Cana, not Cania. In 2nd edition, Fraz-Urb'luu has 1 U, not 2, and so on. Lupercio, the Baron of Sloth, is the demon lord of sloth and darkness. Lupercio is an apathetic and indolent demon, often sleeping in filth-choked riverbeds. He exudes an aura of darkness that extinguishes all light for 10 miles around him, so few can say what he really looks like. Slugbed is a layer of vast, fog-shrouded forests, subterranean vaults, and shallow seas filled with demonic gastropods. Outcast's End is the 137th layer. It's ruled by Azazel, Prince of Scapegoats, demon lord of blame and absolution. If Azazel is anything like the Jewish and Christian character of the same name, then he's a fallen angel. In the Book of Enoch, he was responsible for introducing humans to forbidden knowledge. Lifebane is ruled by Chemosh. In the real world, Chemosh was the primary deity of the ancient Moabites. In D&D, he is an evil god of the undead in the Dragonlance campaign setting. Torrent is the 148th layer of the Abyss. As far as I can tell, there's nothing to say about it except for the fact that its rulership is contested. Hollow's Heart is the lair of Fraz-Urb'luu, Prince of Deception, Abyssal Lord of Lies, Subterfuge, and Illusion. Based off of those titles, you should probably already have an idea of his character. He's unmatched at trickery and deception, and can trap people inside dreams and illusions. His natural form is that of a huge gargoyle, though he often takes on other forms to support his illusions. In fact, he often gets so immersed in these fictional roles that he loses himself in them for a while. He's like the ultimate method actor. He's so deceptive that most of his cultists in the Primaterial Plane aren't even aware that it's him they serve. Fraz-Urb'luu is a bit weaker now than he used to be because he was held captive by an archmage below Castle Greyhawk for 200 years. He escaped, and since then has been rebuilding his strength and his lair, and looking for his magic staff that in the ancient days allowed him to command immense armies of demons. When Fraz-Urb'luu returned, he found his once great lair of Hollow's Heart now a barren and lifeless lair, an endless expanse of fine white powder under a starless black sky. But much of it has since been reformed, though still merely a fraction of what this lair used to be. There's the Blood Dunes, an extremely hot desert of blood-red organic particles hiding ancient ruins where liches lurk. There's the Drooling Jungle, a forest of fleshy trees with gasping mouths, drooling out poisonous ichor upon the ground that's actually a rubbery sheet of skin covered in thick black hair. The Drooling Jungle is inhabited by basilisks, hydras, and legions of barlaguras, and is protected by a gigantic Nalfeshni known as the Gardener. There's the Hollow Sea, an inland ocean of befouled water around which most of the layer's civilization is clustered. These settlements are inhabited largely by orcs, goblins, and ogres, and are ruled over by rakshasas. Each island within the Hollow Sea contains a gate to a different place in the material plane. In this layer, there's also Carantis, a massive iron temple that acts as the focal point of Fraz-Urb'luu's cult. There's the Scarwood, a forest filled with scarred survivors of Fraz-Urb'luu's torment, scavenging for survival. Fraz-Urb'luu likes to let them escape into the woods and then waits a decade or so, long enough for them to develop a real sense of hope before sending his demons after them to finish them off. And finally, there's the layer's capital city, called Zaragmalok. This is where Fraz-Urb'luu dwells. It's a sprawling, circular city of corkscrew towers, twisted domes, and vast amphitheaters in the center of the layer. The city appears empty aside from Fraz-Urb'luu himself and his succubi consorts, but this is an illusion, and the city is actually packed with tens of thousands of petitioners that were sacrificed in Fraz-Urb'luu's name, living out the afterlives of their dreams. But this illusion of perfection and joy is slowly peeled away by Fraz-Urb'luu. Basically, you can think of Fraz-Urb'luu as Michael from The Good Place. All of these features that I described exist within an area the size of a continent, and beyond that, the layer is still a featureless terrain of white powder, yet to be rebuilt. The Writhing Realm, the 177th layer, is ruled by Ugudenk, the Squirming King, Obyrith Lord of worms and hungry parasites. Ugudenk is an impossibly immense worm with a mouth like a twisted carnivorous flower. Ugudenk is so large that the entirety of his body can never be seen, and perhaps never ends. The Writhing Realm is an underground layer of endless tunnels and caverns, created by Ugudenk's endless burrowing. The Rotting Plain is a pungent, nauseating layer of dry savanna and shallow swamplands. It's ruled by Graz'zt, the god of the troglodytes, who is the ultimate scavenger, devouring everything he can. Whatever he devours becomes a part of the plane, and so other demons use this layer as a dumping ground, trusting that Graz'zt will eat whatever they place here. It's also inhabited by Manes, Rudderkin, Vrox, and Glabrezu, which I just learned is pronounced Glabritzu. The Fountain of Screams has no ruler, and that's all there is to say about it. Vulgaria, another example of D&D books disagreeing on spelling, is the layer of Eshabala, a goddess of vanity, charm, cunning, and greed. She is the patron deity of fox women. Shedaklah, also called the Slime Pits, is a bubbling morass of oozing, fetid sludge with a mud-brown sky and rotten green clouds, where everything is coated in a thin film of cloying moisture. The rulership of Shedaklah is contested, split between Juiblex, the Faceless Lord, demon lord of oozes, slimes, and jellies, and Zuggtmoy, the demon queen of fungi. Historically, Zuggtmoy has had the upper hand, controlling most of the layer, while Juiblex and his slimes have been pushed into the deep places. But more recently, Zuggtmoy created the Temple of Elemental Evil as a facade cult, which was later revealed to actually be a cult dedicated to Tharizdun. Zuggtmoy was imprisoned within the depths of the temple for many years and weakened upon her escape, allowing Juiblex to extend his territory in Shedaklah. Zuggtmoy is a female-ish creature of fungus. In 3rd edition, she's fungus from the waist down and humanoid from the waist up. In 5th edition, she's not humanoid at all, but capable of molding herself into an approximation of a humanoid shape. Juiblex is a horrific amorphous slime covered in eyes. The Forest of Poisoned Dreams is a vast forest of toadstools the size of trees. It's the primary feeding ground for the inhabitants of the layer, which include all sorts of fungal creatures. It draws many mortal explorers because this forest contains some of the most potent psychotropic plants in existence. Of course, many of these travelers wind up being eaten by fungi rather than the other way around. The Ichordeep entity is a slowly expanding, syrupy expanse of algae that's currently hundreds of miles wide. The slime pits of Juiblex are 5 bubbling, slime-filled chasms that lead deep into the heart of Juiblex's domain. There is one safe, or safe-ish, settlement in this layer. It's called Jabhalask, a ragtag settlement created by about 400 mortal survivors who are helped by a group of seemingly rogue myconids. At the center of the layer stands Zuggtmoy's palace, a collection of titanic fungi that ascend 4 miles into the sky, connected by bridges and hollowed out to serve as a fortress. These fungi are said to be the largest in the universe. Awfulmound is the 223rd layer, and it used to be ruled by Moander, a god of corruption and decay. But then Moander was slain, and this layer became contested. At some point, Moander returned to life, and now the status of the lair is unclear. The Dreaming Gulf is a phantasmagoric lair of wind and darkness with no ruler. It seems that this is where the dreams of dead evil gods go. The Abyss tries to digest these dreams, but it does so slowly, and the product is the third type of demon that I didn't describe earlier, Lamuras. Lamuras are incorporeal demons that have a tendency to possess mortals in order to satisfy their hedonistic desires. They often possess visiting mortals in urban areas in the Abyss, such as Zelatar and Azzagrat, and ride them back to the material plane to cause havoc and corruption. There are two known types of Lamuras, Diebuks and Yeenoghus. Diebuks possess dead bodies, preferring undamaged bodies so that they can pass themselves off as that person, fooling everyone into thinking they're still alive, where they run the body into ruin while engaging in all manner of depravities before finding a new body. They like to work their way up to better and better bodies, and have an intended specific individual in mind of who they'd ultimately like to possess. Yeenoghus, on the other hand, possess living people while they sleep. They act like parasites, merely riding along in the person's body, allowing them to remain in control, while they don't even realize they're possessed. Once it grows bored or desires a new body, it then takes control and drives its host to go on a spree of horrific crimes until they no longer can. Then it finds a new host. Palpitatia is a layer of fear and eternal darkness. It's ruled by two gods of the bugbears, Gran'khul and Skagaret. The Scalding Sea, the 245th layer, is a bit of a weird one, and that's because the 191st layer is called the Fountain of Screams, but a feature within this layer is also called the Fountain of Screams. I could speculate on why, but I have 48 more layers to describe, so I won't. The Scalding Sea, as you might expect, is a vast sea of acid, dotted by islands here and there. One of those islands is entirely made of black glass, and the ruined town that sits on it is also made of black glass. Embedded in the walls are the screaming forms of various humanoids, and in the center of the town is the Fountain of Screams, number 2, I guess, which spews out acid. This layer is contested. The Hidden Layer used to be ruled by Eltab, demon lord of hatred and retribution. Eltab is an ancient demon who has wreaked havoc in the eastern parts of Faerun for ages. Recently, he was imprisoned by the Red Wizards of Thay, but escaped after a time. Now he resides in Faerun, and the Hidden Layer has now been carved up by Eltab's old Baelor lieutenants who fight over control of the layer. The layer itself is a wasteland of boulders and fissures beset by heavy winds, endless torrential rain, and frequent lightning. Despite the harsh conditions, it's also full of deadly plant life. When the Wizards of Narfell, a long-fallen human kingdom in Faerun, first summoned Eltab from the Abyss, they brought chunks of this layer with them, and now scattered throughout the region are hundreds of pockets of the Hidden Layer called Demon Cysts. Darau is a layer with no ruler. It serves as a point of embarkation for demons on their way to Gehenna, a plane that's an active battleground of the Blood War. Darau is a militaristic layer of wharves and barracks built into the swamps and waters from the river Styx, where hordes of demons are always marching through the iron streets as they board massive barges. Bellistor is a vast wasteland of nothingness with a strong connection to the plane of negative energy, ruled by Ursular, Lord of the Nothing. The Sighing Cliffs is ruled by Linkob, the Lady of Regret, Abyssal Lord of Depression and Desire. She takes the shape of a flame-haired, attractive elf with eyes of burning ice. She reads the desires in the hearts of others and feeds off their lusts. Feng Tu, the 300th layer, is the layer of Tumu, goddess of the North Star, and also of Lu Yue, god of epidemics. Sulphanorum is a layer of intense smoke from both the demons who come here to relax and smoke various foul substances, and the fires that constantly burn in this layer. The stench of the layer is almost unbearable, and the air makes visitors wheeze and ache. This layer has no ruler. Gorian's Grasp, the 313th layer, doesn't have much information about it, aside from the fact that it is contested. The Broken Scale is the layer of Hidukel, god of greed and betrayal in the Dragonlance campaign setting. Since 1st edition AD&D and also 4th edition claim that Thanatos is the 333rd layer, if you go that route, then I guess the Broken Scale should be layer 113. The Black Blizzard is yet another layer with no information about it aside from the fact that its rule is contested. I don't really know why the writers of D&D bother coming up with abyssal layers if all they're going to come up with is the name, or why I feel the need to mention them even though they might as well not exist. I guess I'm just a completionist. The 348th layer, Indifference, is a frigid, blasted plane of jagged terrain with crimson clouds and no natural life. Everything's coated in a layer of dry frost that gets whipped about by the layer's powerful winds to sting the eyes and skin. It used to be a very active layer ruled by Thrall Havoc, but he abandoned it to find more valuable territory. In 2nd edition, a Nalfeshni named Taphion now rules this layer from the Fortress of Indifference, whose walls are woven through with humanoids of every variety, most dead, though several undead, who grasp and claw in a vain attempt to break free. In 3rd edition, it's contested. The Ark of Eternity was an abandoned lair until Kiaransali killed Orcus. Orcus had a demon enslaved to him named Eldenoth, you see, and when Orcus died, his magical enslavement ended. Eldenoth, the Bloodless Scion, demon lord of crime and hatred, now rules this lair from a copper fortress that rises from a rent in the earth. He looks like a tiefling with snakes for fingers, and asks his followers to worship him through the ritual slaughter of criminals by criminals. The Plains of Galen Shu has no ruler, but what it does have is a ton of Armanites. It's a layer of dust, harsh blue light, very little water, constant motion, and rapid decay. The dust is actually so thick that you can hardly see more than an arm's length in front of you, at least usually, and breathing is difficult and painful without a mask. The ground is made of flesh, bones, and blood that have all been ground into dust by the countless hooves of generations of Armanites. Hidden beneath all this blood dust are the ruins of ancient Varangoin cities. Varangoin are abyss bats, remember. They have been in decline in this layer for a long time, though, but they still remember their glory days. Most of the towns in this layer are essentially just fortified stables, where the Armanites regroup and rearm before their next attack against one of the other Armanite warlords that are so common here. But there is one large city, Blackmane, where Rudderkin patrol on enormous mechanical horses. It's older than the Armanites themselves, and it's neutral ground between Armanite factions. Hungry Tarns is a layer of bleak and poisonous fens and black bottomless lakes. It used to be ruled by Surtrus, a long-dead Obyrith Lord, and it's still connected to his power. As Surtrus's power grows and he gets closer to resurrection, this layer becomes increasingly infested with serpentine monsters. According to legend, Surtrus was the first to realize that one doesn't need to worship a god in order to access divine magic. One can simply worship an ideal. He spread this knowledge as his final act, and a wave of godlessness overtook the prime material plane. The Worm Realm is a layer of endlessly twisting tunnels dug out of constantly collapsing earth. Death by suffocation and being ground up are common, and if those don't kill you, then death by disease or poison will, as many inhabitants of this layer seem to come down with fungal infestations, which are thought to be due to a feud between Zuggtmoy and Androlynne, the ruler of this realm. Androlynne is the mole god of evil gnomes, greed, and bloodlust. The inhabitants of this layer include gnome petitioners, manes, purple worms, Hezru, and umber hulks. Woeful Escarand is the layer containing the Mountain of Woe, where Nalfeshni, known as the Lords of Woe, sit atop their thrones of flame and judge newly formed larvae and transform them into least tanar'ri. It's one of the few layers of the Abyss where there's actually a real sense of order, though as I said way earlier in this video, the Nalfeshni do this more as a mockery of order than as a genuine effort to be orderly. The layer itself is a vast space of treacherous terrain that larvae are herded through, and the only real noteworthy feature is the Mountain of Woe, a huge mountain containing all the gates exiting this layer. These gates are one way, so that the Nalfeshni can usher the newly transformed demons through them to a layer where they might be useful. Most of them are sent either to the Plane of Infinite Portals or to Durau. According to 3rd edition, the 400th layer isn't where most of the Abyss's larvae naturally form, but rather the Lords of Woe figured out a way to divert the flow of incoming petitioners to this layer so that they could better sort them to serve the needs of the Blood War. Below the mountain is a place called the Pits of Despair, where the most despicable larvae are sent. The Lords of Woe are all collectively considered to be the rulers of this layer. The Rainless Waste is a parched desert layer with sulfurous rifts wide enough to swallow a town. Mal Arendak, the City of Confusion, is perched on the edge of one of these rifts, with essentially nothing else in the layer but desert and roads leading to the city. It's a strange place for the Abyss, as demons aren't allowed here. It's a city run by archons from Mount Celestia, all in different stages of slowly turning chaotic evil. The leader of the city, Aluciel, is a fallen archon. She's chaotic evil, but still thinks she's lawful good. She's even half demon now and doesn't realize it. Ages ago, she was tasked with escorting a lost soul to Mount Celestia, but accidentally escorted the wrong soul, an evil soul, who planted a seed of malice in her heart. She journeyed to the Abyss instead, bringing several Archons with her, hoping to cleanse the spirits of all those who came to her city. So far, no one's been cleansed. Mal Arendak is a bit of a commercial hotspot for the Abyss, but the Grand Market and the Central Road are really the only safe places in the city. You won't get murdered or anything like that if you venture off the road or out of the market, but it's still a bad idea. You see, Aluciel has created an invisible web of illusion that blankets most of the city, and whenever anyone brushes up against one of the strands of that web, the city conjures an illusion of their fondest desire. If they pursue their desire, they're given everything they've ever wanted in a flood of sensory impressions, and the illusion never ends. People who get lost in this illusion are called the Dream-Cursed, and they're a common sight here. All the other inhabitants of the city learn to live in constant denial of their desires, for fear of being driven insane by Aluciel's illusion. While 2nd edition might consider Aluciel the lord of this lair, 3rd and 4th edition say there is no ruler. The White Kingdom is ruled by Dorsane, king of the ghouls, who ultimately serves Yeenoghu, who rules the next layer. Dorsane used to be a vassal of Orcus, but Yeenoghu's army invaded the White Kingdom through the gate that connects the two layers, and Dorsane was forced to swear fealty to him instead. The White Kingdom is home to the so-called true ghouls, a type of more civilized ghoul. It's a cosmopolitan society of flesh-craving aristocrats. A good amount of Morezi who take on the appearance of gnolls also occupy this layer. Yeenoghu's realm is, as you'd imagine, ruled by Yeenoghu, Prince of Gnolls. Yeenoghu, as I've already mentioned, is variously described as just a demon lord, or actually a god because he's widely worshipped by gnolls. Yeenoghu's realm is also called the Seeping Woods or the Death Dells. It's a dismal, fetid lair of endless yellow forests and savannas where gnolls hunt lesser tanar'ri and any mortal who's foolish enough to enter. The grass here is as sharp as daggers, and the water is poisonous, as well as infested with parasites and disease. Yeenoghu rules this lair from a white mountain that's actually a pile of bones of those he's killed. But in 3rd edition, he rules from a giant palace as large as a city that rests upon stone rollers so that it can be pulled around the lair by thousands of slaves kidnapped from the material plane. This lair was originally ruled by Bechard, or Beckard, Obyrith Lord of Tempests, now Bechard the Rotting Husk, Obyrith Lord of Decomposition and Obsolescence. Bechard was overthrown and killed ages ago, but his death throes have spanned millennia, so while he is essentially a corpse, he's not quite dead yet. Yeenoghu's palace makes an annual stop to Bechard's slowly dying body, beached on the coast of the Curse Swallow, so that Yeenoghu can communicate telepathically with him and learn secrets of the ancient abyss. The Curse Swallow is a rough yellow ocean, the remnants of what the lair was like under Bechard, abhorred by Yeenoghu and his gnolls. Because the gnolls never go here, it's a natural place for escaped slaves to run to, and so they've banded together in an armada that sails the seas looking for food. But because there isn't much food to be had in this yellow, bitter sea, inevitably they resort to cannibalism. After Bechard, the next ruler of this lair was Azael, the Ensnared, demon lord of rebellion and war. When Azael ruled this lair, it was known as the Savage Searing. It was a sprawling desert of shifting sands and toppled cities, with Azael chained to an enormous plaza and ruling despite his chains. The area north of the Screaming Peaks retains Azael's influence, despite the fact that he's long dead. The Screaming Peaks are nearly impassable mountains teeming with undead. This is where the gate to the White Kingdom can be found. The Dun Savannah and the Seeping Woods are where Yeenoghu's influence over the lair are strongest. And yes, the Seeping Woods is one of the names that has been used for this lair, and it's also a locale within the lair, though not within the same edition of D&D. The Dun Savannah is a grayish-brown flat grassland where gnolls and other beasts scavenge. There are 3 encampments spread throughout this region, where Yeenoghu's palace also makes yearly stops. His last stop in the yearly cycle is at the Gathering Gate to acquire fresh slaves from recent raids. It's a huge 2-way portal that allows access to a number of worlds in the Prime Material Plane where Yeenoghu has influence. Galenkur is the 423rd layer of the Abyss. Unlike most other layers of the Abyss listed in the Fiendish Codex, where it says none or contested or the name of the ruler, this layer says unknown. The only noteworthy thing I can find about this layer is that it's the original home of the Abyssal Eviscerators, a demon used in the D&D miniatures game. The 444th layer of the Abyss is another unnamed one. The only information about this lair is that it's the native home of Adarus, one of the many types of demons added in 3rd edition. They basically look like giant millipedes with humanoid faces, like Ko the Face Stealer from Avatar: The Last Airbender. The corruption these creatures exude has transformed the lair into a soupy morass of sticky mud where dismembered body parts float up to the surface. Ahriman Abad is another lair whose only information is its Abyssal Lord. That would be Aramanes, chief of the Cacodemons, demon lord of transformation. I do find it curious that Ahriman Abad and Aramanes are both so similar in name to Ahriman, the true name of Asmodeus according to his 2nd edition Serpent origin story. I suppose it's just that 3rd edition didn't use that backstory, and so the name Ahriman was freed up for use again, and Ahriman is absolute evil in Islamic and Zoroastrian tradition. If you want some cool, non-canonical information about this lair, I've provided a link to a fan-made Reddit post in the description. Androlynne is ruled by Pale Night, the mother of demons, Obyrith Lord of motherhood. Pale Night is ancient even by Obyrith standards. She appears as a beautiful lady shrouded in cloth, though beneath that cloth her true form remains mysterious. Even though she rules this lair, she usually resides in the 600th lair, and has been there long before Baphomet took over the place. His endless maze steers clear of her castle, as he's not willing to confront her. Pale Night is thought to be the mother of many demon lords, such as Graz'zt. Others, though, think she is actually the mother of the entire tanar'ri race. Androlynne is a lair of constant conflict. In most layers of the Abyss, the conflicts are between evil creatures and other evil creatures. Here, though, the conflict is between good and evil. According to 3rd edition lore, long ago, when the Eladrin from Arborea were invading the Abyss to fight the Obyriths, which paved the way for the tanar'ri uprising, Pale Night tricked Askodal of the Court of Stars into a pact. The pact's intention was ostensibly to protect Eladrin children, but in actuality it bound them to this layer of the Abyss, where over many centuries Pale Night and her demons have been picking them off one by one. In response to this trick, Eladrin have been invading this lair ever since, hoping to free the children, who, despite the eons that have passed, are still children due to the magic of the pact. The constant presence of so many good creatures in this lair has altered the landscape. It used to be a haunted, colorless nightmare, but it's turned into a beautifully surreal landscape of vivid colors and lush vegetation. Huge, light purple clouds dominate the sky, their edges taking the shape of screaming faces. The Eladrin and other fate creatures come in through portals in the Boldabingian woods, where evil creatures don't dare to enter. But due to the magic of the pact, the children cannot use these portals. Edelston's Blessing, a small town thought to be a safe haven for the forces of good, and the goodly town of Pascoral are both nearby the woods. Melantonburg is the rallying point of the Eladrin forces, where most of the Eladrin children are. The protectors of the town view the children as the leaders and elders, and so they abide by their dictates. On the other hand, the Fen of Ill Odor, a steaming, overripe swamp, is the home of a sinister Darkweaver, a sort of shadow spider tentacle creature that casts webs of gloom and can manipulate the minds of its victims. It plots to dismantle the Eladrin forces from the inside. The capital city on the demon side is Golmendacoria, a darkened town of crooked towers and cracked cobblestone streets filled with demons. Next to the haunted lake Lambrador is the Mother's Mountain, one of the few places that retains Androlynne's original atmosphere of colorless gloom. Pale Night sometimes resides here. A complex labyrinth is carved inside the mountain, leading to her bone citadel on the 600th layer. Guttlevetch is a layer of hurricanes, shipwrecks, and blood-soaked beaches. Demogorgon assaulted this layer in retaliation against its then-lord, Zuragorex, demon lord of storms and the drowned dead. Demogorgon destroyed the islands on this layer and drove out Zuragorex, who fled to the Scalding Sea, layer 245, though there are rumors that Zuragorex has returned to rebuild this layer. The Lair of the Beast in Mansion of the Rake is the 487th layer. It's ruled by Kenchelsis, god of vampires. This entire layer is an infinite, ever-changing, baroquely designed mansion, complete with halls of mirrors, collapsing staircases, corridors of creepy portraits, shifting walls, and secret passageways. I imagine this layer to be like a Castlevania game, such as Symphony of the Night. Kenchelsis is somewhat of a new god, and has yet to master the divine energy flowing through him, so from time to time he bursts into a feral rage. Normally, he presents a civil, courtly veneer, but during his rages, he says the beast takes over, so he literally goes into beast mode. You might be enjoying being hosted by a gracious, if a bit unsettling vampire, then suddenly he warns you that the beast is coming, and he turns on you, beginning a horrific chase through his maze-like mansion. The Noisome Vale used to be ruled by a powerful Balor named Tarnhem, but he has since gone missing, and now it's a contested lair. This lair has a blasted landscape of volcanic vents and ravines filled with writhing worms. The lair's atmosphere is a haze of acidic gas blasted out by those vents, but then the worms breathe it in and exhale it into normal, breathable air, though this zone of safe air only affects a 50-foot radius around the ravines. The lair is named for the constant and maddening rustling noise the worms make as they crawl over each other. The Steeping Isle is ruled by Cyragl, the Ineffable, Abyssal Lord of Secret Oaths. He has the head of a crocodile, antlers, and the body of a huge muscular human with a long tail ending in a stinger. The Steeping Isle is described as a small, loathsome place with few inhabitants or resources. Kuraristo is a vast, caustic sea. There's at least one rocky island here, containing a massive iron fortress, also named Kuraristo. It was once the site of a huge Beatezu invasion, though that invasion failed. The 500th layer is another unnamed one. According to the Tales from the Outer Planes book, the goddess Kali rules this layer, though she also rules the 643rd layer. This layer is a realm of overgrown red vegetation of every imaginable variety. It also has a red sky, a blood-red ocean, and is inhabited by Rakshasas. Tormor is a layer with no bottom. In a way, it's like the Grand Abyss, though I imagine it to be less narrow. It's a layer of pillars, ramps, connecting beams, and perches floating from ropes and chains, dangling seemingly from nothing in an empty void. Naturally, flying demons inhabit this layer, like Nabasu, Varax, Khazmi, and Succubi, as well as other non-demon flying creatures like gargoyles, harpies, and abyss bats. The gravity in Tormoy is a bit funky. Objects in the plane all have central gravity, so you can stand on any side, but the layer as a whole has its own gravity that shifts direction from time to time. So if you slip off an object, parting from its gravitational pull that I imagine isn't very strong, you'll fall forever until you smack into another hanging object, or perhaps get plucked out of the air and eaten by a Vrak. In addition to demons, though, there's a rather large amount of tieflings that live here. They communicate with each other across long distances with a network of drums with distinct sounds that can travel for many miles. The most well-known place in this layer is Onstraker's Nest, a giant floating collection of timber, bones, earth, and stone pillars. It acts as the nesting ground for the layer's Nabasu, who continually add to it and create tunnels throughout the enormous structure, with their queen buried in the center. In 2nd edition, this layer is ruled by Pazrael, also known as Pazuzu in later editions. He basically neglects this layer, though, looking for bigger and better places to rule. In 3rd edition, Pazrael took this layer from Lamashtu, she who erases, demon lord of monstrous birth and deformity, whom he has imprisoned here. In 4th edition, Pazuzu was Lamashtu's former consort and imprisoned her here, but she rules the layer, not him. By the way, if you're wondering why I've been mentioning 3rd and 4th edition so much but not 5th edition, is because 5th edition has very little material about the Abyss. Occipitous is ruled by Adamarchus, Prince of Madness, Demon Lord of Insanity. Though if Graz'zt gets his way, it will soon be the 4th layer of Azzagrat. All the other information about this layer comes from an adventure path told through multiple editions of Dungeon magazine called The Shackled City. Adamarchus is a fallen celestial that led an army of demons against Mount Celestia. The Archons of the Seven Heavens repelled the invasion, but in order to do so had to cast the part of Mount Celestia the demons occupied into the Abyss. It landed in Occipitous, which allowed Adamarchus and his demon army to take over the layer. The adventure has it that Graz'zt succeeded in deposing Adamarchus by sending his son Athux, disguised as an Archon, to offer Adamarchus redemption. But while Adamarchus currently is imprisoned somewhere in Carcery, he left a curse on the layer that doesn't allow anyone to rule it unless they pass the test of the Smoking Eye, which is a secret 3-stage test that culminates in sacrificing an ally, so the layer then currently has no ruler. Occipitous looks like a great basin surrounded by impossibly steep mountains with a low mountain in the center in the shape of a half-buried skull. Fiery blobs of plasma continuously emit from the eyes of the skull, which rise to form the sky. The ground of Occipitous is a fleshy, warm, damp surface. The Alsaic forests are places where massive rib bones thrust into the air, and the fibrous forests are home to fleshy, rope-like plants that attempt to ensnare passers-by. The plane of cysts is the site of hundreds of bulbous, translucent cocoon things, each with a murky silhouette of a humanoid inside. This is where the ground of Occipitous is attempting to absorb dead celestials. The Abyss can easily digest demons, but digesting lawful good creatures such as celestials takes time, and it's believed that each one digested by the layer brings it closer toward goodness. Malcanthet is the nesting ground of the Chol dragons, wingless, tentacled, chaotic evil dragons. Every person who's visited this layer has fallen to madness, all repeating the word Malcanthet, and so that's presumed to be the layer's name, though it might be the name of its ruler or some other nightmarish entity lurking here. The March of the Pierced Men is a layer with no ruler, and no other information about it. Shatterstone, the 524th layer, is ruled by Vaprak the Destroyer, patron deity of ogres. Molor, the Stinking Realm, is ruled by Juiblex, demon lord of oozes, slimes, and jellies. As you'd expect, this layer is a revolting place of ooze, filth, and decay. It's also a place of long-dead empires, representing the nadir of civilization. The Dripping Tunnels is a labyrinth of muck that underlies the extent of Molor. There's a wide chamber in these tunnels featuring a 15-foot-wide pit with no bottom called the Maw of Eternity. The hopeless citizens of Thulgrim, the only settlement in this layer, which is little more than a collection of rotting shacks, frequently throw themselves into the Maw of Eternity, not knowing or caring if they'll fall to their deaths, fall forever, or get spit back out somewhere else. There's actually a portal inside the Maw that leads to a random place, sometimes other layers of the Abyss, sometimes other outer planes, and sometimes other places entirely. Vudra is a sweltering layer dominated by a sea of blood dotted by countless tropical islands. Everything is poisonous here, including the air. It's ruled by Shakhtari, queen of Meriliths. Garavond is a void lacking light or atmosphere. There's just one feature of this otherwise empty void, a giant metallic orb, home to the ruler of the layer, Heagenti, demon lord of alchemy and artifice. Heagenti's spherical fortress is full of golems and other constructs of his own making. Heagenti has the power to exchange the layer's void for other elements. He can make the whole place a sea of magma, a realm of lightning, and so on. Before, I said that the Blood Rift, 4th edition's version of the Grand Abyss, connected to every layer of the Abyss. Well, this one's an exception, though it is connected to Shedaklah, where Heagenti gathers his alchemical reagents. The Forest of Living Tongues is a layer with no ruler and no other information aside from its name to go on. It sounds unpleasant, though. The Flesh Forges is an ever-shifting layer of living hate and protoplasm. There are lakes of organic fluid and mountains of twisted bone. The ruler of this layer is Duergus, the Chrysalis Prince, demon lord of shaping demons. He has no set body, being as liquid and ever-changing as his lair. He resides in the Chiton Palace, floating above a perpetual maelstrom of molten flesh at the center of the lair. The Chiton Palace is believed to actually be grown from Duergus' body. Other demon lords, such as Demogorgon, have been known to tap into this layer's power to aid in their experimentations in creating hybrid demons. Soulfreeze, the 566th layer, is a vast expanse of ice and snow beset by a cold so bitter that it freezes even thoughts and emotions. They get drawn out of you and drift as ice crystals on the wind. This layer is ruled by Asaroth, the Winter Warlock, demon lord of cold and ice, who actually used to be an evil elemental prince. Shendilavri is likely the most beautiful of all the layers of the Abyss. It's the layer of Malcanthet, or perhaps it's pronounced Malcanthet, queen of the succubi, and she's shaped it away from what it used to be, a layer of heaving hills of flesh and gaping orifices, into what it is now. Shendilavri is a heavenly paradise of panoramic mountains, lush plains, and a scarlet sea under a permanent sunset. Though, as you might expect from a layer of the Abyss, its beauty is designed by Malcanthet to lull visitors into a false sense of safety and relaxation, and underneath all that hide endless torture chambers and laboratories. Though most mortal visitors to the lair, drawn here by the seductions of the succubi and incubi, never see those horrors. They live their short lives here in bliss and luxury until they become completely corrupted. Then they're killed and their souls are consumed by Malcanthet. This 3rd edition lore is a bit at odds with the 2nd edition lore that says succubi kill their victims in the prime material plane and then bring their souls to the Abyss to become new tanar'ri, or to become food. Perhaps both things could be true. Some succubi do it one way and some do it the other way. and it's probably the case that not all succubi serve Malcanthet, as there are many succubi in other layers. Malcanthet keeps her palace in the coastal city of Rivenheart, a vibrant city where all desires can be sated. Not counting Malcanthet, everybody in the city is either immortal or pretending to be. Many of the tunnels and subterranean chambers that pervade the lair are nestled under Rivenheart, where Malcanthet's enemies conspire against her, but her elite force of 13 Lilithus, called the Radiant Sisters, subvert their plots. Lilithus are pretty similar to succubi. The important thing to know is just that they're more powerful. Other notable locations in this lair include Alluvia's Arch, the Fields of Harmony, the Puzzling Hedge, Shudderwall, Estancian, Myomanta, and the Reckless Coast. Alluvia's Arch commemorates Malcanthet's many victories and sexual conquests in the material plane. Studying its inscriptions provides some knowledge of which noble families have been tainted by Malcanthet's seductions over the eons. The Fields of Harmony produce the succulent fruits and grains that feed the mortals of this lair, provided by slaves, of course. It's also where the best and most intoxicating and addictive wine in all of the Abyss is made, though something tells me not many other layers of the Abyss are known for their wineries. The Puzzling Hedge is a great hedge maze in the middle of the lair. It's said that whoever reaches the middle of the maze is granted their heart's desire by Malcanthet herself. A green dragon named Gulmengloom protects the maze against cheaters. Shudderwall is Malcanthet's personal retreat in the foothills north of the Puzzling Hedge. It's a freestanding cathedral of carnal delights where Malcanthet takes her favored mortals, though the complete self-indulgence on offer sometimes leads to progressive violence and murder. Estancian is a fortress city on a remote island in the Scarlet Sea, where Malcanthet keeps her rarely used army of incubi, though she often sends slaves or minions who've displeased her to them for torture. Myomanta is the city of artists. The Radiant Sisters reside here, each with their own manor and neighborhood of their favored lovers and artists. New slaves to the lair are sent to the flesh pits of Myomanta to be catalogued and assigned to duty elsewhere in the lair. The Reckless Coast is a stretch of coastland by Alluvia's Arch where hermits and monks dwell, intentionally living right next to immense temptation in order to better hone their self-restraint. The Prison of the Mad God serves as the prison of, you guessed it, the Mad God, of the Darrow, Dinkarazon. Maybe you didn't guess that last part. Darrow, by the way, are like Duergar, but chaotic evil. In fact, the Planes of Chaos box set says that Dinkarazon is a Duergar god, though most other sources disagree. This layer is a swirling vortex of gas with rings of whirling rocks flying around the Mad God's throne. Dinkarazon was cursed into madness and banished to this layer by Ilsensin, the deity of the Mind Flayers. He's granted a moment of lucidity once every 50 years, but most of the time he's tormented by illusions of the things he fears most. Even still, he rules this layer. Goranthus, the 597th layer, is also called True Paradise. It has a lot of similarities to Shendilavri in that it's also a realm of carnal delights and deviancy. It's ruled by Sokoth Benoth the Persuader, demon lord of persuasion, from his palace of quivering flesh. There's also a sculpture garden called Saturnalia, filled with lifelike sculptures in all manner of seductive poses. The Endless Maze is the lair of Baphomet, Prince of Beasts, Abyssal Lord of Minotaurs and Beasts. He's a hulking, 20-foot-tall brute with a bull's head and cloven hooves. This version of Baphomet is a bit different from other depictions of Baphomet, such as the one used by the Satanic Temple. Baphomet is classically a symbol of equilibrium between opposites, half man and half animal, half man and half woman, half good and half evil. That version of Baphomet would fit right in the Outlands, but D&D's Baphomet is a psychopathic, raging murderer and mad scientist. The Endless Maze is as it sounds, a never-ending labyrinth, inspired by the myth of the labyrinth Daedalus built for King Minos to house the Minotaur of Crete. The labyrinth corridors are usually 10 feet wide, and the ceilings are usually 10 to 20 feet up, though sometimes the paths open into vast vaults. There is no natural illumination in the maze, and blood smears and mangled bodies are common sights in the torchlit halls. You know you're in the center of the infinite maze when you notice that the maze architecture is in good repair, and the further you go from the region Baphomet himself patrols, the more crumbling and natural-looking the passages become. Several other labyrinths in the Abyss connect to this lair, such as the Valley of the Crypt Things in Thanatos or the Puzzling Hedge in Shendilavri. The Endless Maze is full of Minotaur tribes and Garistros, and other breeds of demons created by Baphomet in his Tower of Science, which is a 200-foot-tall tower with bridges at different heights connected to various levels of the maze. The tower contains 16 floors, each one dedicated to a different scientific area of interest to Baphomet, such as torture, death, skinning, taxidermy, vivisection, dissection, and if you, like me, didn't know the difference, vivisection is dissection of living patients, flesh grafting, breeding experimentation, and skeletal construction. Baphomet spends more time here than he does in the Lichtion, which is his palace. The Lichtion has 1,000 chambers surrounded by a moat, and is just as much a maze as the maze around it. As you explore the Endless Maze, the maze may fall away as you come upon a wide circular plain of bones, in the middle of which lies the Bone Castle of Pale Night, looking extremely aged and delicate, while in actuality it's quite sturdy. Baphomet doesn't intrude in this region of the lair, and Pale Night leaves the rest of the lair to him. Another open area within the maze is the enormous coliseum called the Fields of Brass. This is where Baphomet and his minions go to sate their desire for carnage. The Endless Maze, in addition to Baphomet's minions, is occupied by several mortals, mostly humans and gnolls, who struggle for survival while Baphomet's demons casually hunt them down. The most successful of these survivors, called the Lost, live in the outskirts of the maze. There's also plenty of demons who are enemies of Baphomet, mostly minions of Graz'zt and Yeenoghu, Baphomet's biggest rivals, who scour the maze attempting to destroy the Prince of Beasts. Though of course they get just as lost in here as any other visitor, and so Baphomet doesn't consider them a threat. Conflagratum is a layer of fire and ruins. In a vast city broken by the ravages of war, the only thing that remains intact is the palace of Alzrius, Lord of Infernal Light, Abyssal Lord of Fire and Destruction. A blinding flame always emanates from this palace. The lair is home to an army of Armonites and Babaus, who each carry a torch bearing a flame from the body of Alzrius with them on their raids to the Grey Waste and the other lower planes, where all they leave is flame and destruction in their wake. Valeshan is a trap lair that corrupts all who enter. It operates on a cycle. First, a portal opens to some world in the prime-material plane. Then the demons of this lair invade that world, but are pushed back by the mortals, who are goaded by their streak of victories into invading the lair. They encounter more victories, seemingly taking over the lair, and then the portal closes. So the good-aligned mortals must make their home here in the remains of some long-abandoned city of mortal design. Perhaps they hope to cosmically realign an abyssal layer to one of the upper planes, but they never do, because before long the corrupting influence of the layer itself affects the mortals, leading them to either kill each other or transform into demons. Either way, they belong to the Abyss. This layer has no ruler, not counting the leader of whatever mortal invasion force imagines himself to be the ruler at any given time. The Caverns of the Skull is the realm of Kali, the Black Mother, Vedic god of life and death. The layer is a tangle of black tunnels and caverns lit by torchlight that are constantly being created and destroyed at Kali's whim. It's a layer of perpetual sacrifice and mass murder, as the petitioners in this layer cannot die, at least not truly. After being killed, they're reborn soon after so that they may be killed again, or maybe this time be the one doing the killing. All of the gates out of this layer are closed by default. One of Kali's proxies, that is, higher-ups, guards each gate, and you must kill them to open the way. Nethuria is ruled by Vukarik, consort of Chains, demon lord of chains and torture. It's believed that Vukarik is somehow related to the Kaitans, or chain devils, of Beator. Perhaps he used to be one of them before becoming a demon lord. The Rift of Corrosion is a contested layer. That's all there is to say about it. Zionin is ruled by Obox-ob, Prince of Vermin, an Obyrith lord who was the original claimant to the title Prince of Demons that Demogorgon now holds. He dreams of taking back the title, killing the tanar'ri demon lords, and putting the whole of the Abyss back in Obyrith hands, or pincers, or whatever. Zionin is a fetid, infested layer of jagged badlands and vast oceans of thick, syrupy resin inhabited by an aristocracy of ecolids. The ecolids dip mortals into the ocean's sludge, which solidifies their bodies at the exact moment of their suffocation. They then use these death sculptures as the building blocks of enormously complex hive cities. The Void is the 665th layer of the Abyss. It's a bottomless black void where visitors fall until they die from dehydration or until the winds flay away all their flesh. Several portals throughout the Abyss lead to this layer, but none lead out. And that's all the numbered layers of the Abyss, but there are 4 more non-numbered layers. Demon Wing is a layer of the Abyss that Demogorgon had transformed into a ship that could take its passengers to any location in the lower planes. It's ruled by a Balor named Straoth. The Plains of Rust used to be a grim, swampy layer of little importance. Devils came and built fortresses here so that they could press their attacks in the Blood War from within the Abyss. Orcus and Juiblex banded together to stop them, using their powers to ruin the lair. Orcus's mastery of necrotic energy and Juiblex's command over caustic ooze saturated the lair with decay. The Devil's fortresses crumbled in a matter of days, falling apart into clouds of rust. This rust came to blanket the entire lair, and now it's a plain of rust dunes, flat basins, and dark sinkholes where the wind blows incessantly. The wind occasionally whips itself into the shape of a grand palace in the distance, called the Palace of Dust. Each time the palace looks the same, but thus far no one has managed to reach it before it disintegrates again. The Bloody Fen is a region where the old swamp still remains, a toxic mire of sludge hidden beneath a thin coating of hard-packed dust. While most of the Beatezu fortresses crumbled into dust, one partially remains, called Fort Splinter. It's fallen apart, but still recognizably a fortress, likely still standing due to powerful magics. Adventurers are drawn here by the stories of ancient magical artifacts contained within, but usually don't leave on account of the evil spirits that lurk here. This layer has no ruler. The Spires of Razjak is a layer of dry canyons, black badlands, and top-heavy spires that appear to have been eroded by a long evaporated sea. Rock arches form gates, but they only allow creatures into the lair and not out. This lair is home to masses of nomadic demons who wage constant war on one another and run from the ever-rampaging Razjak, the bestial demon lord of this lair. Razjak is over 80 feet tall and twice as wide, a monstrous, near-mindless creature of many limbs and maws. It's said that Razjak used to be a demon lord of terrible beauty and guile, but Graz'zt stole these things from him. In 4th edition lore, Graz'zt was originally a devil, an agent of Asmodeus. So according to this lore, the idea is that the thing that originally caused Graz'zt to transform from devil to demon was the stolen essence of Razjak. One of the few actual structures in this layer is the Bastion of Hate, carved into a mountainside and humming with arcane energy, making it a prized possession for the warring hordes of demons that populate this layer. The largest open place in the layer is Sorrow's Crescent. A strange, inky liquid rolls down this canyon's sides, giving random powers to those who drink it. None of the gates in this layer lead out, but legend tells of one that does, the Greenfire Doorway. Some say it's a particular doorway that hasn't been found yet. Others say it's a phenomenon that sometimes affects one of the doorways, wreathing it in green flame and allowing for two-way passage. Zulreg is ruled by and is the prison of the demon lord Arnazi, a worm-like horror of fiery flesh known as the Caged Worm. Zulreg is a sweltering forest of massive trees, rotting undergrowth, and boiling marshes. The center of the lair contains a mountain-sized tree of tar and flame called Gorewood, from which Arnazi's hive, called Firehive, hangs. The tree's rotten interior houses chambers and tunnels infested by the cult of Arnazi. Arnazi's demons that die in the prime material plane are reborn here in Zulreg, harder, stronger, and crueler than before. Their souls feed Gorewood's roots, and they percolate upwards to form chrysalis pods in a chamber within the great tree called the Scabbery. The endless sodden tunnels beneath Gorewood are known as the Warrens of Rot. These tunnels were once each roots of the burning tree, but have since burned away to become hollow charcoal tubes. Firehive drops vile liquids onto the ground below, which form a boggy wetland known as White Marsh, a primordial soup that gives rise to all sorts of monsters. And that is all the layers. Whew. At least that's all the ones mentioned in any of the D&D books I managed to find. Let me know if I missed any. My personal favorite layer is the Lair of the Beasts in the Mansion of the Rake. I hope you enjoyed your time in the Abyss, even if it was incredibly long. You may have noticed that my videos have been getting longer and longer. I don't intend for that to be a trend. This video is super long for 3 reasons. The biggest reason is that the Abyss is special. It has 114 named layers. That's like 20 times more layers than most planes. So how could the video be short with that many layers to talk about? Reason number 2 is that I included a bunch of info from 3rd and 4th edition. It could have just been an hour if I would have stuck to 2nd edition, but I've gotten feedback asking me to include more than just 2nd edition. And reason number 3 is that I could have broken this up into many videos, but I made a poll about it and most people wanted a big video rather than several smaller ones. Plus, I figured the bigger the better as far as YouTube analytics goes. But even with this absurd length, there are still things I didn't talk about. But still, I'd guess my next Planescape video will be much shorter than this one. And speaking of that, let me know down in the comments what outer plane or other topic you'd like me to cover in my next video. So far, I'm leaning towards Elysium, as I got a few votes for that one on my last video, but I'll wait a week to see how the votes shake out. If you enjoy these videos and you'd like to help me make more, or make them a bit faster, then consider supporting me on Patreon. But whether you do or you don't, thank you for watching. And if you've watched this entire video, you're awesome. Thank you.